The contract landed on the table like a death sentence. Alina Russo stared at the forged signature, her own name twisted into collateral for a debt she'd never heard of. Across from her sat Lorenzo Vance, the man whose empire fed on blood and broken promises. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. One word from him, and her entire world would collapse. But when she looked up, her eyes weren't filled with fear. They burned with calculation. If you want to see how a woman turns a death trap into a power move, stay until the end. Hit that like button and comment your city, so I can see how far this story travels. The room smelled like old leather and expensive lies. Alina Russo sat perfectly still in the wingback chair, her spine straight, her hands folded in her lap like she was attending a business meeting instead of her own funeral. Across the mahogany table, three men watched her with varying degrees of interest. Her father, Vincent Russo, looked like he'd aged 10 years in the last 10 minutes. His lawyer, a sweating mess named Gerald, kept dabbing his forehead with a handkerchief. And then there was Lorenzo Vance. He was the kind of man who made silence dangerous. Lorenzo didn't fidget, didn't blink, didn't waste energy on unnecessary movement. He simply existed in the space like an apex predator that had already decided whether you were prey. Dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from marble, sharp jawline, angular cheekbones, eyes the color of smoke before a fire. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her entire wardrobe, tailored so precisely it looked like armor. And right now those smoke-gray eyes were fixed on her. "Miss Russo," Lorenzo said, his voice low and smooth, with just enough edge to remind you he could slit your throat with the same tone he'd used to order coffee. "Do you understand what this document represents?" Alina's gaze dropped to the contract spread between them. It was old, or made to look old. Yellowed paper, faded ink, official stamps that seemed legitimate at first glance. Her father's signature sat at the bottom, bold and unmistakable. And right next to it, in a clause that made her stomach turn, was her name. In the event of default, Vincent Russo pledges his eldest daughter, Alina Marie Russo, as surety and bond to the Vance family, to be claimed at their discretion. "I understand what it says," Alina replied, her voice steady. "What I don't understand is how my signature got there when I never signed it." Gerald's head snapped up. "Miss Russo, this is hardly the time for what?" She turned to him, one eyebrow raised. "For honesty? For pointing out that this contract is either a forgery or a setup?" Lorenzo's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Interest, maybe? Or amusement? Vincent finally spoke, his voice hoarse. "Alina, please, just let me handle this." "You've been handling it for 3 weeks, Dad." She looked at her father, and her heart cracked a little at how broken he looked. Vincent Russo had built a logistics empire from nothing: warehouses, shipping routes, distribution networks that stretched across 3 states. He was sharp, methodical, impossible to fool. But the man sitting next to her now looked hollow. "And in those 3 weeks, you didn't tell me about any of this." "I was trying to protect you." "By using me as collateral without my knowledge? I didn't—" Vincent's voice broke. "I swear to you, Alina, I didn't know about this clause until they showed up." They meant Lorenzo Vance and the 2 enforcers standing behind him like stone monuments. One was built like a tank, all shoulders and silent menace. The other was leaner, quicker looking, with eyes that tracked every movement in the room. Lorenzo leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled beneath his chin. "Your father borrowed a substantial sum 15 years ago. The terms were clear. Repayment was expected within 10 years. It's now year 15, and the debt remains unpaid." 15 years ago, I was 9 years old, Alina said flatly. "You're telling me my father signed a contract putting his 9-year-old daughter up as collateral?" "The contract speaks for itself." "The contract is fake." The room went silent. Even Gerald stopped sweating for a second. Lorenzo's head tilted slightly, like a wolf catching an unexpected scent. "Excuse me?" Alina stood, and every man in the room tensed. The enforcer on the left shifted his weight. Lorenzo's hand moved fractionally toward his jacket, but Alina simply walked to the table and picked up the contract, holding it up to the light. "This paper is treated to look old," she said, her analyst's brain clicking into gear, "but the aging is uneven. See here?" She pointed to the edge. "The discoloration is heavier on the corners, which means it was probably baked or chemically treated. Real aging happens from the inside out, especially on documents stored in files. This was artificially aged. Gerald made a choking sound. Vincent's eyes went wide. Lorenzo didn't move. Continue. The ink. Alina turned the page. It's modern iron gall ink made to look historical. But if you look closely at the signature, my signature, you can see the stroke weight is inconsistent. It was traced, not written. Whoever forged this studied my handwriting but didn't account for pressure variance. She set the contract down and met Lorenzo's gaze head on. This document is a forgery, which means someone wanted me in your house badly enough to fake a 15-year-old contract. The question is, who benefits from that? For a long moment, no one breathed. Then Lorenzo smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. It was the smile of a man who'd just found something unexpectedly interesting. You're right, he said simply. Gerald's pen clattered to the floor. What? Vincent stammered. Lorenzo stood, buttoning his jacket with precise movements. She's absolutely right. The contract is a forgery. A good one, but a forgery nonetheless. He looked at Alina with something that might have been respect. I suspected as much when it was presented to me 3 weeks ago, but I wanted to see how the Russo family would handle it. You suspected. Vincent's face went red. You've been putting us through hell for 3 weeks as some kind of test? Not a test, Mr. Russo. Due diligence. Lorenzo walked around the table, stopping a few feet from Alina. Up close, he was taller than she'd thought. Broader. The kind of presence that filled a room and didn't apologize for it. Someone forged this contract and brought it to me. Someone with access to your company records, your signature samples, and detailed knowledge of your daughter. The implication hung in the air like poison gas. An inside job, Alina said quietly. Precisely. Vincent's face drained of color. Who? That's what I intend to find out. Lorenzo's gaze never left Alina. But whoever orchestrated this went to extraordinary lengths to put your daughter in my custody. Which tells me 2 things. 1, they want access to whatever she knows. And 2, they want her where I can't easily protect my own operation. Protect from what? Alina asked. From sabotage. From infiltration. From the kind of systematic dismantling that's been plaguing my supply chains for the last 6 months. Lorenzo's voice was calm, but there was steel beneath it. Someone is taking my empire apart piece by piece, and they've gone to great trouble to place you at the center of it. Alina's mind raced. You think I'm the saboteur? No. Lorenzo's smile turned sharp. I think you're the weapon someone else wants to use. But here's the problem, Miss Russo. That forgery was convincing enough that half my organization believes it's real. Word has already spread that I came here to collect on a debt. If I leave empty-handed, I look weak. And in my world, weakness is fatal. The pieces clicked into place with horrible clarity. So you're going to enforce a contract you know is fake, Alina said slowly. I'm going to enforce the appearance of the contract, because the real game isn't about the debt. It's about finding out who's trying to destroy me from the inside, and you, Miss Russo, are now the perfect bait. Vincent shot to his feet. Absolutely not. I won't let you use my daughter as... You don't have a choice. Lorenzo's voice didn't rise, but it cut through Vincent's protest like a blade. The forgery exists. My people believe it. If I don't follow through, I show weakness to whoever set this up. They'll know I'm onto them, and they'll disappear. But if I take her, if I play along... He looked back at Alina. We might actually catch them. This is insane, Gerald whispered. This is strategy, Lorenzo corrected. And Miss Russo understands that, don't you? Alina did. She hated that she did, but she did. She looked at her father, really looked at him. Vincent Russo had been sick for months. The doctors called it stress-related, but Alina knew better. Something had been eating at him, wearing him down. If Lorenzo was right, if someone inside their organization was behind this... What exactly are you proposing? She asked. Marriage, Lorenzo said bluntly. Tonight. Immediate and binding. You come into my house as my wife, not my prisoner. You'll have access to everything you need to help me find who did this. And in exchange, I protect your father and clear his name when this is over. And if I refuse? Lorenzo's expression didn't change. Then the forgery stands as real in the eyes of my organization. Your father's business will be dismantled for parts to cover the debt. His logistics network will be absorbed into mine, and you'll spend the rest of your life wondering if you could have stopped whoever's been destroying him from the inside. It wasn't a threat. It was a fact. Alina turned to her father. Dad, tell me the truth, all of it. Vincent looked 10 years older than he had that morning. 6 months ago, I started noticing irregularities, shipments going missing, routes changing without authorization, money disappearing from accounts I didn't even know we had. He rubbed his face. I thought I was losing my mind. I thought the illness was making me paranoid, but then the debts started appearing. Old contracts I didn't remember signing, obligations I couldn't verify, and 3 weeks ago, Lorenzo's people showed up with that. He pointed at the forged document. I've been trying to prove it was fake, but every lawyer I hire, every investigator I bring in, they either find nothing or disappear. Someone's cleaning up behind themselves, Alina said. Someone very good at it, Lorenzo added, which is why I need someone they don't expect, someone they think they've already controlled. He extended his hand to Alina. Help me find them. Help me burn their operation to the ground, and I'll make sure your father survives this. Alina looked at the hand. Strong, scarred knuckles. A man who'd built an empire with blood and bone. What are the terms? She asked. Lorenzo's smile was knife-sharp. Smart girl. We negotiate. 20 minutes later, Alina stood in front of a floor-length mirror in an adjoining room while a woman she'd never met pinned a veil into her hair. The terms had been simple, brutal but simple. She would marry Lorenzo Vance that night. She would live in his estate, attend his functions, play the role of dutiful wife. But she would also have unrestricted access to his company's financial records, shipping manifests, and personnel files. She could investigate freely, question anyone, go anywhere. In exchange, Lorenzo would provide round-the-clock protection for her father and cover all his medical expenses. The marriage would last until they found the saboteur. After that, annulment, clean break. Everyone walks away. Except Alina didn't believe in clean breaks. You don't have to do this, Vincent said from the doorway. Alina met his eyes in the mirror. Yes, I do. He's a dangerous man, Alina. I've heard stories. I know exactly who he is, Dad. She turned to face him. Lorenzo Vance controls half the eastern seaboard's underground economy. His family has been in power for 3 generations. He's ruthless, calculating, and probably responsible for things that would give me nightmares. She crossed to him and took his hands. But right now, he's also the only person with the resources to help us. And whoever set this up wanted me close to him for a reason. So let's find out why. Vincent's eyes were wet. When did you get so brave? I learned from the best. She squeezed his hands. Now go. Lorenzo's people will take you somewhere safe. I'll call when I can. Alina, I love you, Dad. Trust me. He pulled her into a hug that lasted too long and not long enough. Then he was gone, escorted out by one of Lorenzo's men. The seamstress finished with the veil and stepped back. Beautiful, she murmured in accented English. Alina looked at herself. The dress was simple. Ivory silk, empire waist, cap sleeves. Nothing flashy. Nothing that screamed Mafia wedding. Just elegant enough to be believable. She looked like a bride. She felt like a soldier going to war. Tot. The ceremony took place in Lorenzo's private office, witnessed by a judge who asked no questions and 2 witnesses Alina had never met. No music, no flowers, no pretense that this was anything other than a business transaction. Lorenzo stood at one end of the room in the same charcoal suit, looking like he performed shotgun weddings every Tuesday. The judge droned through the vows. Do you, Lorenzo Michael Vance, take this woman? I do. And do you, Alina Marie Russo, take this man? Alina looked at Lorenzo, really looked at him. There was something in his eyes, not warmth exactly, but acknowledgement. He knew what he was asking of her. He knew the cost. I do, she said. The judge pronounced them married. Lorenzo produced a ring from his pocket, a simple platinum band with a single diamond that caught the light like a warning. He slid it onto her finger with clinical precision. You may kiss the bride, the judge said, already closing his book. Lorenzo's hand cupped her jaw, tilting her face up. His thumb brushed her cheekbone once, a gesture that might have been gentle in another context. Then he kissed her. It was brief, controlled. The kind of kiss designed to seal a contract, not start a romance. When he pulled back, his expression was unreadable. "Welcome to the family, Mrs. Vance," he said quietly. And just like that, Alina Russo ceased to exist. The estate was everything she'd expected and worse. Lorenzo's home sat on 20 acres of manicured grounds, 40 minutes outside the city. The main house was a sprawling Tudor revival with enough rooms to house a small army, which, based on the security personnel Alina counted, it probably did. Cameras everywhere. Guards at every entrance, the kind of place you didn't leave without permission. A prison wrapped in expensive architecture. Lorenzo led her through the main entrance without ceremony. A housekeeper materialized to take Alina's coat. A younger man, late 20s, charming smile, eyes like Lorenzo's but warmer, appeared from a side hallway. "So this is the mystery bride," he said, extending a hand. "Adrian Vance, the better-looking brother." Alina shook his hand, noting the firm grip and easy confidence. Alina. "Oh, I know who you are. Lorenzo's been very secretive about you." Adrian shot his brother a look. "Didn't even invite me to the wedding. I'm hurt." "You were in Miami," Lorenzo said flatly. "I could have flown back." "You were busy." "Never too busy for family." Adrian turned back to Alina, his smile widening. "Welcome to the madhouse. Fair warning, the East Wing is haunted, the cook has a temper, and my brother doesn't actually sleep. He just stands in dark corners thinking ominous thoughts." Despite everything, Alina felt her mouth twitch. "I'll keep that in mind." "Adrian," Lorenzo said, and there was a warning in his voice. Right. I'll leave you two to your wedding night." Adrian winked at Alina. "If you need anything, and I mean anything, I'm just down the hall. Lorenzo's great at intimidation, but I'm much better at conversation." He disappeared up the stairs, leaving a wake of cologne and easy charm. "Your brother seems different from you," Alina observed. "Adrian's the acceptable face of the family," Lorenzo said. "He handles public relations, legitimate business partnerships, anything that requires a smile and a handshake." He started walking, and Alina followed. "I handle everything else." They climbed a grand staircase to the second floor, then down a long hallway lined with portraits of stern-faced men who all shared Lorenzo's jawline. He stopped at a set of double doors. "Your room," Alina blinked. "My room." "This is a business arrangement, Mrs. Vance, not a real marriage." Lorenzo pushed open the doors, revealing a suite that was bigger than her entire apartment. King bed, sitting area, private bathroom visible through an open doorway. "You'll have privacy. My room is at the end of the hall if you need anything." "How thoughtful," Alina said dryly. Lorenzo's mouth twitched, almost a smile. "There are clothes in the closet. My assistant took the liberty of guessing your size. If anything doesn't fit, let her know." He checked his watch. "I have a meeting in an hour. Dinner is at 8. Dress code is business casual." "Am I invited to this meeting?" "No." "I thought I had unrestricted access." "You do. But walking into a room full of my captains on your first night would be suicide. They need to accept you exist before they accept you listening." Lorenzo's gaze was steady. "Patience, Mrs. Vance. We're playing a long game." Alina wanted to argue, wanted to demand immediate access to everything. But he was right. She could see the logic. Pushing too hard too fast would raise suspicion. "Fine," she said. "Dinner at 8. Lorenzo nodded and turned to leave. "Lorenzo." He paused, looking back. "Why did you really agree to this?" Alina asked. "You could have investigated the forgery yourself. You didn't need to actually marry me." For a moment, Lorenzo's mask slipped. Something flickered across his face. Calculation, maybe, or recognition. "Because whoever set this up knew exactly what they were doing," he said quietly. "They knew your background. They knew you're not just Vincent Russo's daughter. You're the analyst who rebuilt his entire logistics network 3 years ago. You see patterns other people miss, and they wanted you close to me for a reason." He met her eyes. "So I'm going to find out what that reason is, and then I'm going to destroy everyone involved." He left without waiting for a response. Alina stood in the doorway of her gilded cage and wondered, not for the first time that night, what she'd just walked into. Dinner was a test. Alina knew it the moment she walked into the dining room and saw the table. 20 feet of polished mahogany, set for 10. Lorenzo sat at the head, Adrian to his right. The other seats were filled with men who looked like they'd stepped out of a crime thriller casting call. Hard eyes, expensive suits, the kind of people who made problems disappear. Every single one of them was staring at her. "Gentlemen," Lorenzo said without preamble, "my wife, Alina." The silence was deafening. Alina took the empty seat to Lorenzo's left, moving with deliberate calm. She'd worn a navy sheath dress, simple, elegant, forgettable, the kind of thing that said, "I belong here," without saying, "Look at me." A server appeared, pouring wine. "I didn't know you were seeing anyone," one of the men said. He was older, silver-haired, with a scar running through his left eyebrow. "Quite the surprise." "Marcus," Lorenzo acknowledged. "It was a private matter." "Very private," another man added, younger, slicked-back hair, too much cologne. "No engagement announcement, no party, just married." "Tony," Lorenzo said, and it was a warning. But Tony wasn't done. "I'm just saying, boss, it's unusual. We usually vet family additions. Make sure they're—" His eyes slid to Alina. "Compatible." "Are you questioning my judgment?" Lorenzo's voice could have frozen vodka. "No, of course not. Just concerned." "Your concern is noted." Well, Lorenzo picked up his wine glass. "Now drop it." The table fell silent. Dinner was served. Some kind of braised lamb that probably cost more than Alina's monthly rent. She ate mechanically, aware of every eye tracking her movements, testing her, waiting for her to make a mistake. Halfway through the meal, Marcus spoke again. "So, Alina, what do you do?" "Here we go," she thought. "I'm an analyst," she said evenly. "Logistics and supply chain optimization." "For who?" "My father's company, Russo Distribution." Recognition flickered across several faces. Tony leaned forward. "Russo? Vincent Russo?" "Yes." "Didn't he borrow money from the Vance family years ago?" The trap was beautifully laid. Alina met Tony's eyes. "He did. The debt has been settled." "That's one way to put it," Tony murmured. Adrian jumped in smoothly. "Alina's brilliant, actually. She completely restructured Russo's network, cut costs by 30% while increasing throughput. I've been trying to poach her for months." "And now she's family," Marcus observed. "How convenient." "Very," Lorenzo agreed, his tone suggesting the subject was closed. But Alina was tired of being talked around. "You're wondering if I'm a liability," she said, setting down her fork. Every head turned. "You're thinking, Lorenzo married the daughter of a debtor. That's either a power move or a weakness. And you're trying to figure out which." Tony's smile was slow and mean. "Smart girl. Smart enough to know that you're testing me, that this dinner is performance theater designed to see if I break." Alina leaned back in her chair, channeling every ounce of confidence she didn't quite feel. "So let me save you some time. Yes, my father owed Lorenzo's family money. Yes, I'm now married to Lorenzo. And yes, that puts me in a complicated position. But I'm also very good at my job. I don't scare easily, and I have no intention of being a pawn in whatever power games you people play." The silence was absolute. Then Marcus started laughing. It was a rusty sound, like he didn't do it often. "I like her," he said to Lorenzo. "She's got spine." "She does," Lorenzo agreed, and there was something in his voice that might have been approval. Tony wasn't amused. "Spine's great. Loyalty's better." "Then I guess we'll see which I value more," Alina said sweetly. The dinner continued with slightly less hostility. Adrian kept the conversation moving, asking innocuous questions about Alina's work, her thoughts on the city, whether she'd had a chance to explore the estate yet. Marcus told a surprisingly funny story about a shipping mishap in Baltimore. Even Tony eventually relaxed enough to stop glaring. But Alina didn't miss the looks, the silent conversations happening across the table. These men were Lorenzo's inner circle, and she was the outsider who'd appeared overnight. They'd accepted Lorenzo's word for now, but trust? That would have to be earned. After dessert, some elaborate chocolate thing Alina barely tasted, Lorenzo stood. "Marcus, Tony, my office. 10 minutes. The two men nodded and filed out. Adrian caught Alina's eye. You survived, he said with a grin. Congratulations. Was it supposed to be that obvious? Alina asked. Oh, incredibly. Lorenzo doesn't do subtle very well. Adrian stood buttoning his jacket. For what it's worth, you handled yourself beautifully. Marcus is already planning to adopt you, and Tony's just mad because you're smarter than he is. And you? Adrian's smile turned thoughtful. Me? I'm just glad my brother finally found someone interesting. He hesitated. Word of advice? Don't let them intimidate you. Half of this is smoke and mirrors. The other half is just deeply damaged men playing with very expensive toys. He left before Alina could respond. Lorenzo reappeared in the doorway. Walk with me. It wasn't a request. They walked through the estate's grounds in silence. Security lights illuminated the paths, casting long shadows across manicured lawns. In the distance, Alina could see the dark shapes of guards patrolling the perimeter. You made an impression, Lorenzo said finally. Was I supposed to be meek? No, meek would have gotten you eaten alive. He glanced at her. But you took a risk, confronting them directly. They were going to test me anyway. Better to control the narrative. Lorenzo's mouth curved slightly. Where did you learn that? Business school. Alina wrapped her arms around herself against the cool night air. Also from watching my father negotiate with people who thought he was an easy target because he was honest. You learned pretty fast that showing weakness is permission to be destroyed. Your father didn't strike me as weak. He's not. He's just... Alina struggled for the word. Principled. It makes him vulnerable to people who aren't. Like me, Lorenzo said. It wasn't a question. Alina stopped walking and turned to face him. I don't know what you are yet. Jury's still out. Lorenzo studied her for a long moment, and Alina had the unsettling feeling he could see straight through her careful composure to the terrified woman underneath who had no idea what she was doing. The meeting I'm about to have, he said, concerns the sabotage I mentioned. Someone's been systematically disrupting my operations for months. Shipments intercepted, warehouses hit, key personnel disappearing. The pattern suggests insider knowledge. And you think the forged contract is connected? I know it is. The timing's too precise. The forgery appeared 3 weeks ago, right after my largest distribution hub was raided by federal agents acting on an anonymous tip. Someone wanted me distracted. Someone wanted me looking at your father instead of my own organization. Alina's mind raced. What did they find in the raid? Nothing. The shipment had been moved hours before they arrived, which means someone inside my operation is also protecting it, playing both sides. A double agent. Or someone building leverage. Lorenzo started walking again. That's why I need you. These men have worked for me for years. I've bled with them, buried friends with them. My usual instincts aren't working because I'm too close. But you? He looked at her. You see patterns, you solve puzzles, and no one will suspect the new wife of investigating her husband's business. Unless they're the ones who put me here for exactly that reason, Alina pointed out. True. Which is why we need to move carefully. They'd reached a fountain, some elaborate marble affair with dolphins and cherubs. Lorenzo sat on the edge. Tomorrow, I'm taking you to the main office. I'll introduce you as my wife, show you around, let people get used to seeing you. You'll have access to everything under the guise of learning the family business. And what am I really looking for? Anything that doesn't fit. Financial irregularities, personnel changes, communication patterns. You'll know it when you see it. Alina sat next to him, the stone cold through her dress. This is insane. You know that, right? We just met. You're trusting me with information that could destroy you. I'm trusting you with information that could save us both, Lorenzo corrected. Because whoever's behind this wanted you in my house, which means you're either part of their plan or the biggest threat to it. What if I'm part of the plan? Then I'll know soon enough, and you'll wish the forgery had been real. Lorenzo's voice was matter-of-fact, like he was discussing the weather. But I don't think you are. You're too curious, too focused on finding the truth. That's not the behavior of someone following orders. You can tell that after one day? I can tell a lot of things. Lorenzo stood, offering his hand. Come, you should rest. Tomorrow's going to be exhausting. Alina let him pull her to her feet, acutely aware of how warm his hand was, how solid. For a man with a reputation built on violence, his grip was surprisingly gentle. They walked back to the house in silence. At the base of the stairs, Lorenzo paused. One more thing. Adrian. What about him? He's charming, trustworthy mostly, but he's also ambitious. Don't mistake friendliness for alliance. You don't trust your own brother? I trust him as much as I trust anyone, which isn't saying much. Lorenzo's expression was unreadable. Just be careful who you confide in. Everyone in this house has an agenda. Including you? Especially me. He left her standing at the base of the stairs, watching his broad shoulders disappear down a hallway. Alina made her way to her room and locked the door behind her. The events of the day crashed over her all at once. 12 hours ago, she'd been a logistics analyst with a normal life. Now she was married to a crime boss, living in a mansion full of armed guards, tasked with uncovering a conspiracy that could get her killed. She should be terrified. She was terrified. But underneath the fear was something else, something sharp and hungry and alive. Purpose. For the first time in years, Alina felt like she mattered, like what she did could change something bigger than next quarter's shipping efficiency. She changed into the silk pajamas someone had left on her bed and slipped under covers that probably cost more than her car. The room was silent except for the distant sound of voices from somewhere below. Alina stared at the ceiling and started making lists in her head. People to watch, questions to ask, patterns to find. Somewhere in Lorenzo's empire, someone was playing a game. Someone who'd orchestrated an elaborate forgery to put her exactly where she was right now. And Alina was going to find them, even if it killed her. Alina woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and the distinct feeling that someone was watching her. She sat up fast, heart hammering, and found Adrian Vance leaning against her doorframe with 2 cups of coffee and an apologetic smile. Door was open, he said, holding up 1 cup like a peace offering. Housekeeper's doing rounds. I figured you could use this more than another hour of sleep. Alina pulled the covers higher, acutely aware she was in silk pajamas, and her hair probably looked like a disaster. What time is it? 7:30. Lorenzo wants you downstairs by 8. Adrian crossed the room and set a cup on her nightstand. Fair warning, he's in a mood. Marcus called an hour ago with news about another warehouse hit. 3 trucks stolen, drivers missing. The fog of sleep cleared instantly. When? Last night, while we were having dinner. Adrian's easy smile faded. Someone's making a statement. Alina threw back the covers and headed for the closet, not caring that Adrian was still in the room. The walk-in was the size of her old bedroom, lined with clothes she hadn't chosen. She grabbed the first business-appropriate outfit she saw. Black slacks, ivory blouse, fitted blazer. You're not freaking out, Adrian observed. Should I be? Most people would be. You just found out you married into a war. Alina emerged from the closet, clothes in hand. Adrian, I'm going to change now. Unless you want to have a very awkward conversation, I suggest you wait in the hall. He laughed and retreated, pulling the door mostly closed. I like you, he called through the gap. You've got backbone. Lorenzo needs someone who won't fall apart when things get messy. Things are already messy, Alina said, changing quickly. She'd learned to dress efficiently in college. Late nights in the lab followed by early morning presentations. They've been messy since before I got here. True, but now they're interesting messy. Alina opened the door fully, running a brush through her hair. Adrian was leaning against the opposite wall, still holding his coffee cup. Up close, in morning light, she could see the family resemblance more clearly. Same sharp cheekbones, same intense eyes. But where Lorenzo's gaze was steel, Adrian's was quicksilver, always moving, always calculating. Why are you really here? She asked. To escort you to breakfast. Lorenzo's orders. No, why are you really here? Adrian's smile turned genuine. Because you're the most interesting thing to happen to this family in years, and I want a front row seat. He pushed off the wall. Also because Lorenzo told me to make sure you don't get lost. The East Wing is a nightmare. They walked through hallways that twisted like a maze. Alina committed every turn to memory, left at the portrait of the stern woman in pearls, right at the marble bust, straight past the library. By the third corridor, she'd have bet money she could find her way back. "You're mapping it," Adrian said. "What?" "The house. You're creating a mental map. I can see you counting doorways." He grinned. "Told you." "Interesting." The breakfast room was smaller than the dining hall, but no less intimidating. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the gardens. Lorenzo sat at the head of a table laden with enough food to feed 20 people, reading something on a tablet. He looked up when they entered. "You're late," he said to Adrian. "I'm fashionably punctual." Adrian pulled out a chair for Alina, then dropped into the seat across from her. "Besides, I brought your wife. That's worth at least 5 minutes of grace." Lorenzo's gaze shifted to Alina. "You slept well?" "Well enough." She poured coffee from a silver carafe, noting how her hand didn't shake. Small victories. Adrian mentioned another warehouse hit. "Marcus is handling it." Lorenzo set down the tablet. "The drivers are alive. They were found tied up 2 miles away. The trucks are gone, along with approximately $2 million in product." "Product," Alina repeated carefully. "Legitimate product," Lorenzo clarified. "Electronics, high-end computer components, en route to a distributor in Boston. Nothing illegal, which makes the theft even more pointed." "They're not after your criminal operations?" Alina said slowly. "They're targeting your legal businesses." "Exactly." Lorenzo leaned back in his chair. "Which narrows the suspect pool considerably. Most of my enemies don't distinguish between legal and illegal. They'd hit whatever causes maximum damage. But someone who specifically targets the legitimate side, someone who wants to destroy your credibility," Alina finished. "Someone who wants the legal world to stop trusting you. If your legitimate businesses fail, you lose your cover, your reputation, your ability to move freely in both worlds." Adrian whistled low. "She's good." "She is." Lorenzo's expression was unreadable. "Which is why today, you're going to meet the people who run those legitimate businesses, all of them." Alina set down her coffee cup. "I thought we were going to the main office." "We are. But first, we're making stops. 3 locations, 3 different operations. I want you to see how everything connects." Lorenzo stood, buttoning his suit jacket. "And I want my people to see you. Word is spreading about last night's dinner. By noon, everyone in my organization will know I've married Vincent Russo's daughter. We need to control that narrative before someone else does." The limousine was waiting in the circular driveway, black and sleek, and exactly what Alina expected. Lorenzo held the door for her, a gesture that might have been chivalrous if it didn't feel like being loaded into a very expensive cage. The driver was the lean enforcer from yesterday, the one with quick eyes. He nodded once at Alina in the rearview mirror but didn't speak. "First stop is the shipping company," Lorenzo said as they pulled through the gates. "Vance Logistics. It's the backbone of the operation. Everything flows through there. Legitimate cargo, inventory management, route planning. Your father's company actually uses our services." "I know," Alina said. "I vetted you 3 years ago when we were expanding into the Northeast. Vance Logistics had the best rates and reliability metrics. I recommended the partnership." Lorenzo's head turned slightly. "You vetted me." "I vet everyone. It's my job." Alina watched the estate disappear behind them. "You run a tight operation. On-time delivery rates above 95%, minimal damage claims, excellent customer service. From a pure logistics standpoint, you're one of the best in the region." "And from a non-logistics standpoint?" "From a non-logistics standpoint, I knew exactly who owned the company. I'm not naive, Lorenzo. I knew what I was recommending. But the numbers didn't lie, and my father needed reliable routes." She met his gaze. "I'm very good at separating business from morality when I need to be." Something shifted in Lorenzo's expression. "That's a dangerous skill. So is running a criminal empire behind a logistics company. I guess we both have dangerous skills." The corner of Lorenzo's mouth twitched, almost a smile. The shipping facility was massive, 3 warehouses spanning 6 acres, with loading docks that never seemed to stop moving. Trucks coming and going, forklifts weaving between pallets, workers in high-vis vests shouting instructions over the beep of reversing vehicles. Lorenzo's arrival brought everything to a brief standstill. Heads turned, conversations stopped. Then activity resumed, but Alina could feel the weight of attention tracking their movement. A woman in her 50s emerged from an office, tablet in hand, gray hair pulled into a severe bun. "Mr. Vance, we weren't expecting you today." "Sophia." Lorenzo gestured to Alina. "My wife, Alina. She'll be spending time familiarizing herself with our operations." Sophia's expression didn't change, but her eyes sharpened with assessment. "Mrs. Vance." "Welcome, Mike." She extended a hand, her grip firm and no nonsense. "I manage this facility. If you have questions, I'm your resource." "Thank you." Alina glanced around the warehouse floor. "How many trucks do you run daily?" "Approximately 200 routes, more during peak season, and last night's theft. Was it a scheduled route?" Sophia's gaze flicked to Lorenzo, who nodded fractionally. "Yes," Sophia said. "Regular Boston run. Same driver for 3 years, same route, same timing. We've never had an issue." "Until last night," Alina murmured. "Were there any changes, new personnel, route modifications, different cargo?" "Nothing. It was standard protocol." "Which means someone knew the protocol," Alina said. "Someone familiar enough with your operations to know exactly which truck to hit and when." Sophia's jaw tightened. "We're looking into it." They spent an hour touring the facility. Alina asked questions that seemed innocent but weren't, about scheduling systems, personnel access, cargo tracking. Sophia answered each one with growing respect. By the time they left, Alina had a mental map of the entire operation and a list of potential security gaps. "You made an impression," Lorenzo said as they drove to the next location. "Sophia's smart. She knows I wasn't just making small talk. She also knows you understand logistics better than most of my managers. That's valuable." Lorenzo checked his phone, frowned at something on the screen. "Next stop is the investment firm, Vance Capital Management. Officially, it handles wealth management for high net worth clients. Unofficially, it's how we clean money and fund operations without raising flags." "You're telling me this because you'll figure it out anyway. Better to control the information." Lorenzo looked at her. "I'm trusting you with a lot, Alina. Don't make me regret it." "I could say the same thing." The investment firm occupied the top 3 floors of a glass tower downtown. Everything was chrome and marble and the kind of aggressive professionalism that screamed money. The receptionist recognized Lorenzo immediately and ushered them into a corner office where a man who looked like he'd stepped out of a cologne ad rose to greet them. "Lorenzo, this is unexpected." His smile was practiced, perfect. "And you've brought a guest." "My wife, Alina." "Alina, this is Derek Chen. He runs Vance Capital." Derek's handshake was exactly as slimy as Alina expected. "A pleasure." Lorenzo didn't mention he was seeing anyone. "It was a quick courtship," Lorenzo said smoothly. They talked business for 20 minutes. Derek showed them quarterly reports, investment portfolios, client acquisition numbers. Everything looked legitimate. Everything probably was legitimate on the surface. But Alina watched Derek's eyes when Lorenzo asked about certain accounts, saw the micro-expressions that suggested layers beneath layers. "Your background is finance?" Derek asked Alina during a lull. "Logistics and supply chain, but I understand numbers." "She's being modest," Lorenzo said. Alina rebuilt her father's company from near bankruptcy, tripled revenue in 3 years. Derek's interest sharpened. "Impressive. We should talk sometime. I'm always looking for people who understand efficiency." "Maybe," Alina said noncommittally. They left after another 15 minutes of pleasantries. Back in the car, Lorenzo loosened his tie slightly. "Derek's ambitious, smart, completely loyal as long as the money flows. He's also skimming," Alina said. Lorenzo's hand stilled on his tie. "Excuse me?" "He's skimming, not much, maybe 2, 3%. But I saw it in the numbers. The quarterly returns don't quite match the portfolio growth when you account for market conditions. Someone's taking a cut before it hits the books." "You got that from a 20-minute meeting?" "I got it from watching his eyes when you asked about the Singapore accounts." He hesitated. Just a fraction of a second, but it was there. Alina shrugged. "Maybe I'm wrong, but if I were you, I'd audit those accounts." Lorenzo was quiet for a long moment. Then he pulled out his phone and typed something quickly. "Marcus will look into it." You believe me? Your father didn't build an empire by being bad at reading people. If he taught you half of what he knows— Lorenzo pocketed his phone. I believe you're worth listening to. The third stop was a restaurant. High-end, the kind of place with a 6-month waiting list and a Michelin star. Lorenzo led her through the front entrance instead of the back, nodding to the maitre d' who looked like he'd swallowed a lemon at the sight of them. We're not on the reservation list, the man said stiffly. We don't need to be, Lorenzo replied, and kept walking. They wound through the dining room, all white tablecloths and crystal, and through a door marked private. The back office was a different world. Men in suits who didn't look like investment bankers. The smell of cigar smoke. A safe in the corner that probably held more than just receipts. An older man looked up from a desk. Lorenzo, twice in 1 week. I'm honored. Carlo, Lorenzo gestured to Alina. My wife. Carlo's expression shifted through surprise, calculation, and finally landed on cautious welcome. Well, this is news. It's going to be everywhere by tonight, Lorenzo said. I wanted you to hear it from me first. Alina Carlo runs the restaurant group. 5 locations, all profitable, all versatile. Versatile, Carlo repeated with a dry smile. That's diplomatic. He stood, offering Alina his hand. Welcome to the family, Mrs. Vance. You have my sympathies. Alina liked him immediately. Thank you, I think. They sat, and Carlo poured bourbon from a crystal decanter without asking if they wanted any. So, the girl from the Russo contract. I heard you expose the forgery. News travels fast, Alina said. In this business, news travels at the speed of paranoia. Carlo slid a glass toward her. Which means everyone knows Lorenzo married you anyway. People are drawing conclusions. Let them, Lorenzo said. The conclusions don't matter. What matters is finding who forged the contract. Any leads? We're working on it. Lorenzo's tone suggested the subject was closed. How's business? They talked for another hour. Carlo was sharp, funny, and clearly had known Lorenzo for years. He told stories about Lorenzo as a teenager, learning the business, about the old guard, and how things used to run. Alina listened, piecing together the history of the organization through anecdotes and careful omissions. When they finally left, the sun was setting, painting the city in shades of amber and rust. Carlo likes you, Lorenzo said in the car. Carlo's charming. Carlo's dangerous. Don't mistake charm for softness. Lorenzo's phone buzzed. He read the message, and his jaw tightened. Marcus found something. We're going back to the estate. The drive felt longer than it should have. Alina watched the city give way to suburbs, then countryside. Her mind kept circling back to the same question. Who benefited from putting her in Lorenzo's house? Someone who wanted access to his records. Someone who knew she was an analyst. Someone who thought she'd either help them or serve as a distraction. Someone close enough to know everything. Marcus was waiting in Lorenzo's office when they arrived, along with Tony and 2 other men Alina didn't recognize. All of them looked grim. What did you find? Lorenzo asked without preamble. Marcus opened a laptop and turned it around. Derek's accounts. Alina was right. He's been skimming. Small amounts over 2 years, routed through shell companies. But that's not the interesting part. He clicked through several screens. Financial records, transaction logs, wire transfers. The interesting part is where the money goes after Derek takes his cut. It doesn't stay in his accounts. It gets moved again through 3 more shells and ends up here. Marcus pointed to a final destination account. An offshore entity called Meridian Holdings. Who owns it? Lorenzo's voice was dangerously calm. That's the problem. I can't crack it. Whoever set it up knew what they were doing, layers on layers of protection. But I did find one thing. Marcus pulled up another screen. Meridian Holdings made a payment 3 weeks ago. $50,000 to a legal firm in the city. The same firm that drafted your contract with Vincent Russo. The room went silent. Alina's heart was pounding. Someone paid the firm that had access to my father's records. Someone with enough money to buy silence and expertise, Marcus confirmed, and enough technical knowledge to hide their tracks. This isn't amateur hour. This is professional-grade financial manipulation. Tony leaned forward. So Derek's dirty. We put pressure on him, find out who he's working for. No, Lorenzo said. If we spook Derek, whoever's running Meridian will disappear. We need to follow the money further. I can try to trace Meridian's other transactions, Marcus offered, but it's going to take time, and there's no guarantee I'll find anything. Alina was thinking, her mind moving through possibilities like a flowchart. The legal firm. Did they draft the forged contract, or did someone just use their letterhead? Marcus blinked. What? Think about it. If someone paid the firm $50,000, what did they pay for? Access to records, yes. But did the firm actually create the forgery, or did someone steal the materials and do it themselves? Alina stood, pacing. Because if the firm created it, they're complicit. But if someone just bought access and did the work separately, the firm might not even know they were part of a forgery. Lorenzo's eyes tracked her movement. You think the firm is innocent. I think they're a tool. Someone needed their records to make a convincing forgery. They paid for access, maybe bribed a paralegal or an assistant, got what they needed and disappeared. So the firm might have records of who accessed the Russo files, Marcus said slowly. Exactly. Security logs, access records, anything that shows who was in the system 3 weeks ago. Alina turned to Lorenzo. Can you get that information? I can get anything, Lorenzo said. The question is whether the firm will cooperate or whether we need to apply pressure. Tony grinned. I vote for pressure. I vote for diplomacy first, Adrian said from the doorway. No one had heard him enter. He strolled in, hands in pockets, looking completely relaxed. The firm in question is Hartley and Associates. Very old, very prestigious, very concerned with reputation. A quiet conversation with the senior partner about potential security breaches might yield better results than breaking kneecaps. When did you get so diplomatic? Tony muttered. I've always been diplomatic. You just don't pay attention. Adrian looked at Lorenzo. Want me to handle it? I've worked with Hartley before on some of our legitimate contracts. They trust me. Lorenzo considered. Take Alina with you. Adrian raised an eyebrow. Really? She's the one who spotted the pattern. She should see it through. Lorenzo's gaze shifted to Alina. Unless you're uncomfortable. Alina thought about it for exactly 2 seconds. When do we go? Tomorrow morning, Adrian said. I'll set up a meeting. Tell them it's about reviewing some contracts. Nothing alarming. His smile was easy, but his eyes were calculating. We'll charm them, ask some questions, and get those security logs. Simple. Nothing about this is simple, Alina said. That's what makes it fun. The meeting broke up shortly after. Marcus took his laptop to continue digging into Meridian Holdings. Tony and the other men dispersed to handle various pieces of the operation. Adrian disappeared with a casual wave, leaving Alina alone with Lorenzo in his office. You should eat something, Lorenzo said, pouring himself a drink from a cabinet. It's been a long day. I'm not hungry. You need to eat anyway. He pressed a button on his desk, and within 2 minutes a housekeeper appeared with a tray of food. Sandwiches, fruit, something that looked like soup. They ate in silence. Alina's mind was still churning through possibilities, connections, patterns. Derek was skimming money. The money went to Meridian Holdings. Meridian paid the law firm. The law firm had access to her father's records. You're thinking too loud, Lorenzo said. Alina blinked. What? I can practically hear your brain working. Lorenzo set down his drink. Tell me. It's too coordinated, Alina said. Derek skimming money for 2 years. The forgery appearing 3 weeks ago. The warehouse hits. Someone's been planning this for a long time, and they've been patient. That's not opportunistic. That's strategic. Which means whoever's behind this knows you, really knows you. They know your operation, your people, your weaknesses. This isn't a rival trying to take you down. This is someone who's been inside long enough to map everything. Lorenzo was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was soft. That's what I've been afraid of. How many people have that level of access? In my inner circle, maybe 10. 15 if you count second-tier management. Lorenzo's hand tightened on his glass. All people I've trusted for years, some of them I've known since we were kids. One of them is betraying you. Yes. The weight of that admission hung between them. Alina set down her sandwich. Tomorrow, Adrian and I will get the security logs. We'll find out who accessed my father's records. That's a lead. A real one. And if it points to someone close to me, then you deal with it. Alina met his eyes. That's what you do, isn't it? Deal with problems? Lorenzo's smile was bitter. That's one way to put it. They finished eating in silence. When Alina finally stood to leave, Lorenzo stopped her. Alina. She turned. Thank you, he said. For today. For seeing what I couldn't. You hired me for this. I married you for this, Lorenzo corrected. There's a difference. Alina didn't know what to say to that, so she just nodded and left. Her room felt emptier than it had the night before. She changed into pajamas, brushed her teeth, went through all the mechanical motions of preparing for sleep. But when she finally climbed into bed, her mind wouldn't quiet. Somewhere in Lorenzo's organization, someone was destroying him piece by piece. Someone patient, someone smart, someone who'd set up an elaborate scheme to put her exactly where she was. Alina stared at the ceiling and wondered if she was hunting a traitor or walking straight into a trap. Either way, tomorrow she'd start getting answers. The law firm of Hartley and Associates occupied a building that looked like it had been transplanted from colonial Boston. Red brick, ivy-covered walls, brass plaques polished to a mirror shine. Adrian held the door for Alina, and they stepped into a lobby that smelled like old money and older secrets. Remember, Adrian said quietly as they approached the reception desk, we're here about routine contract review, nothing threatening. We're the friendly clients who just want to make sure everything's in order. I know how to play nice, Alina said. Do you? Because last night at dinner you basically told Tony he was an idiot. Tony is an idiot. Adrian's laugh was genuine. Fair point. The receptionist, a woman in her 60s with reading glasses on her chain, looked up with a practiced smile. Good morning. How may I help you? Adrian Vance to see Mr. Hartley. We have a 10 o'clock appointment. Recognition flickered across her face. Of course, Mr. Vance, one moment. She picked up a phone, murmured something, then hung up. Mr. Hartley will be right with you. Please, have a seat. They settled into leather chairs that probably cost more than Alina's monthly rent. Adrian looked completely at ease, scrolling through his phone like they were waiting for coffee instead of trying to uncover a conspiracy. You do this a lot? Alina asked quietly. What, meet with lawyers? All the time. Most of our legitimate business requires contracts, permits, all the boring legal infrastructure that keeps things running. Adrian glanced at her. Why? Nervous? Should I be? Probably. Hartley's sharp. He'll know we're fishing for something. Then we'd better make sure he wants to help us find it. Before Adrian could respond, a door opened and a man emerged who looked exactly like what Alina expected a senior partner to look like. Mid-60s, silver hair, Brooks Brothers suit, wire-rimmed glasses. His handshake was firm but not aggressive, his smile professional but warm. Adrian, good to see you again. His gaze shifted to Alina. And this must be the famous Mrs. Vance. The whole city is talking about Lorenzo's surprise wedding. I'm sure they are, Alina said evenly. Thank you for seeing us on short notice, Mr. Hartley. Please, call me James. Any friend of the Vance family is a priority. He gestured toward the door. Shall we? His office was exactly what she expected. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, mahogany furniture, windows overlooking a small courtyard garden. James settled behind his desk and folded his hands, the picture of attentive professionalism. So, he said, Adrian mentioned something about reviewing contracts? Among other things, Adrian said smoothly, we're doing an audit of our legal documentation across all the businesses, making sure everything's up to date, properly filed, no surprises lurking in old agreements. Very prudent. What specifically can I help you with? Alina leaned forward slightly. We're particularly interested in contracts your firm drafted for the Russo family, specifically any agreements involving Vincent Russo and the Vance organization. Something shifted in James's expression. Not quite suspicion, but heightened awareness. The Russo contracts. May I ask why? Because one of them turned out to be forged, Alina said bluntly. The silence that followed was profound. James removed his glasses, cleaned them with a handkerchief, put them back on. The classic stalling technique. That's quite an accusation. It's not an accusation, Adrian said. It's a fact. 3 weeks ago, someone presented Lorenzo with a contract allegedly drafted by your firm, supposedly signed 15 years ago, putting Alina as collateral for her father's debt. The contract was a fake. And you're certain? We had it analyzed, Alina said. The paper was artificially aged. The signatures were traced. The document was designed to look like it came from your firm's archives, but it didn't. James was very still. If that's true, someone used our firm's name and reputation to perpetrate a fraud. That's extremely serious. We know, Adrian said, which is why we need your help. We need to know who had access to the Russo family files approximately 3 weeks ago. Security logs, visitor records, anything that shows who might have pulled those documents. That information is confidential. Someone paid your firm $50,000 3 weeks ago, Alina interrupted. We have the transaction record. The payment came from an offshore account, and we believe it was made in exchange for access to confidential files. We're not accusing your firm of complicity, Mr. Hartley. We think someone bribed a member of your staff. James's face had gone pale. 50,000. Do you want us to go to the police? Adrian's tone was gentle but firm. Because we can. We can make this public, launch an investigation, drag your firm through the mud. Or you can help us find who did this quietly, and we all walk away with our reputations intact. It was a masterful play. Alina watched James calculate the options, saw the moment he realized cooperation was his only viable choice. I'll need to check our records, James said finally. This will take some time. We can wait, Alina said. James stood and left the office, moving with the careful dignity of a man trying not to show how rattled he was. The door clicked shut behind him. Adrian exhaled slowly. Well, that went better than expected. He's terrified, Alina observed. He should be. If this gets out, his firm is finished. 50 years of reputation destroyed because someone on his staff got greedy. Adrian stood and walked to the window, hands in pockets. The question is whether he finds something useful or whether he buries it to protect himself. He'll find it. He's more afraid of Lorenzo than he is of bad publicity. You're learning, Adrian said with a slight smile. They waited 20 minutes. Alina spent the time studying the office, the carefully curated art, the degrees from Harvard and Yale, the photographs of James with various politicians and business leaders. A lifetime of building credibility, all potentially undone by one corrupted employee. When James returned, he was carrying a folder and looked 10 years older. I found something, he said quietly, setting the folder on the desk. 3 weeks ago, one of our junior associates accessed the Russo files. Harold Chen. He's been with us for 2 years, good performance reviews, no red flags. But according to our security logs, he pulled the Russo contracts on a Saturday night when the office was empty. Did he check them back in? Alina asked. No, the files were returned Monday morning, but there's no record of Chen scanning or copying anything, which means he did it off the books, Adrian finished. Photographed the documents, maybe, or made physical copies. James nodded grimly. I checked Chen's employment records. 2 days after accessing the files, he deposited $25,000 into his bank account. The deposit slip listed it as a consulting fee. Half the payment up front, Alina said. The other half probably came later, once the forgery was complete. Where's Chen now? Adrian asked. That's the problem. He didn't show up for work this morning. I called his apartment. No answer. His emergency contact is his mother, and when I called her, she said she hasn't heard from him in days. James looked miserable. I think he's gone. Or been disappeared, Alina said quietly. The thought hung in the air like smoke. Adrian pulled out his phone and sent a quick text, presumably to Lorenzo or Marcus. We need Chen's home address, his known associates, anywhere he might run. Can you provide that? I'll have my assistant compile everything we have. James hesitated. What are you going to do when you find him? Have a conversation, Adrian said. A very thorough conversation. They left Hartley and Associates 20 minutes later with a file folder containing everything the firm had on Harold Chen. Address, phone numbers, previous employment history, even his college transcripts. James had been remarkably cooperative once he realized the alternative was watching his firm implode. In the car, Adrian called Lorenzo and put him on speaker. We have a name, Adrian said without preamble. Harold Chen, junior associate at Hartley. He accessed the Russo files 3 weeks ago, got paid $25,000 for it, and disappeared this morning. Marcus is already running him. Lorenzo's voice came through, calm and controlled. Last known location was his apartment in Brooklyn. I'm sending people there now. We're on our way, Adrian said. No, come back to the estate. I need you both here. Lorenzo, that's not a request. Lorenzo's tone left no room for argument. We need to talk. All of us. The line went dead. Adrian stared at the phone for a moment, then started the car. Well, that sounded ominous. The drive back felt longer than it should have. Alina watched the city pass by, her mind churning through implications. Harold Chen had been a tool, a means to an end. Someone had paid him to access the files, probably never intending for him to survive long enough to talk. If Chen had disappeared this morning, right when they were getting close. They're cleaning up, she said aloud. Adrian glanced at her. What? Whoever's behind this, they knew we'd trace the forgery back to the law firm eventually. So they're eliminating loose ends. Chen was never supposed to be found. Which means they have someone watching Hartley's office, someone who saw us go in. Adrian's hands tightened on the wheel. We might have just painted a target on ourselves. We already had targets on our backs. At least now we're moving forward instead of waiting. That's a very Lorenzo way of thinking. Maybe I'm learning from him. Adrian's expression turned thoughtful. He's different with you, more. Open. Lorenzo doesn't let people in. Ever. But with you, he's actually explaining things instead of just issuing orders. He needs me to find the traitor. Of course he's explaining things. It's more than that. Adrian was quiet for a moment. My brother spent his entire life building walls. Our father was difficult, violent. He taught Lorenzo that trust was weakness, that caring about people got you killed. And for years, Lorenzo believed it. He became exactly what our father wanted. Cold, ruthless, untouchable. He glanced at Alina. But I've seen the way he looks at you when you're not paying attention. Like you're a puzzle he's trying to solve. Like you might be the exception to every rule he's ever made. Alina didn't know what to say to that, so she said nothing. They arrived at the estate to find Lorenzo's office crowded. Marcus was there, along with Tony, Sophia from the shipping facility, and Carlo from the restaurant. All of Lorenzo's inner circle gathered around his desk like generals planning a war. Lorenzo looked up when they entered. Good, we're all here. What's going on? Adrian asked. Marcus found Chen. Lorenzo's voice was flat. Or rather, he found what's left of him. Alina's stomach dropped. Marcus pulled up a photo on his laptop and turned it around. Even prepared for something bad, the image made Alina's breath catch. Harold Chen was clearly dead, slumped in what looked like a warehouse, a single bullet wound visible in his forehead. Found him an hour ago in one of our old storage facilities in Red Hook, Marcus said. The ones we haven't used in 6 months. Since the sabotage started, Lorenzo added. Someone's been using our abandoned properties as dumping grounds. How long has he been dead? Adrian asked. Medical examiner's preliminary guess is 12 to 18 hours. Killed last night, probably around the same time we were having our meeting here. Marcus closed the laptop. Whoever did this knew we were getting close. They eliminated Chen before he could talk. Tony swore under his breath. They're inside. They have to be. They knew about our meeting, knew we'd trace the forgery, knew exactly when to clean up. Someone in this room, Sophia said quietly. The temperature in the office dropped about 20 degrees. Lorenzo stood slowly, his gaze sweeping across each person. That's the working theory. Someone with access to our communications, our schedules, our operations. Someone who's been feeding information to an outside party while systematically destroying us from within. You think it's one of us, Carlo said. It wasn't a question. I think it's someone close enough to know everything and patient enough to plan this for years. Lorenzo's voice was dangerously calm. The skimming started 2 years ago. The sabotage started 6 months ago. The forgery was executed 3 weeks ago. This isn't opportunistic. This is strategic. Long-term planning by someone who understands exactly how we operate. So what? Tony stood up, face flushed. We're all suspects now? You're going to interrogate your own people? If that's what it takes, that's insane. What's insane is pretending this isn't happening. Lorenzo's hand came down on the desk hard enough to make everyone jump. Someone in my organization is destroying it. Someone I trusted. Someone who's probably in this room right now, listening to every word, already planning their next move. The silence was absolute. Alina watched the faces around her. Marcus, stone-faced and calculating. Tony, angry and defensive. Sophia, controlled but tense. Carlo, watching everyone else with sharp eyes. And Adrian standing beside her, his usual easy charm replaced by something harder. "There's another possibility," Alina said, and every head turned. "What if it's not someone in this room?" Lorenzo's gaze fixed on her. "Explain. Everyone here is top tier. You trust them with your life. But what about the people who support them? Assistants, deputies, the second layer of management?" Alina moved to the desk, her mind racing. "Think about it. To pull this off, you'd need access to financial records, shipping schedules, personnel files. But you wouldn't need direct access. You'd just need to work for someone who has it." Marcus leaned forward. "You think it's someone's assistant. I think it's someone smart enough to stay in the background. Someone who can access information without raising flags because they're supposed to have access." Alina looked around the room. Derek has assistants. Sophia has warehouse managers. Carlo has shift supervisors. Any of them could be feeding information up the chain without their bosses knowing. "That's dozens of people," Tony said, "which is why we narrow it down." Alina turned to Marcus. "The offshore account, Meridian Holdings. Can you trace any connections to second-tier personnel? Family members with unusual financial activity? Lifestyle changes that don't match salary?" Marcus was already typing. "I can run background checks on everyone who reports directly to this group. Financial records, phone logs, travel history. If someone's living beyond their means or has offshore connections, I'll find it." "Do it," Lorenzo said. "Everyone in this room provides a list of their direct reports by end of day. Full names, positions, how long they've been with the organization. Marcus runs them all." "That's going to take days," Sophia protested. "Then we work fast." Lorenzo's gaze swept the room. "Until we find who's behind this, no one is above suspicion. That includes all of you. If you have a problem with that, the door's behind you." No one moved. "Good. Marcus, start with Derek's people. We know he's been compromised. Sophia, I want security footage from every warehouse for the last 6 months. Carlo, audit your staff. Anyone with access to the books? I want to know about them. Tony, pull communication logs. Who's been talking to who, when, and how often?" Orders issued, the group dispersed. Within minutes, only Lorenzo, Alina, and Adrian remained. Lorenzo poured himself a drink with deliberate care. "That was smart, redirecting suspicion to the second tier." "It's also true," Alina said. "You surround yourself with people you trust, but you can't vet everyone who works for them. Still, you gave them an out, a way to believe they're not under suspicion." Lorenzo took a sip. "Political. Survival," Alina corrected. "If you turn your inner circle against each other, the organization falls apart, whether you find the traitor or not." Adrian was watching them both with an odd expression. "You two are starting to think alike. That's either really good or really terrifying." "It's necessary," Lorenzo said. "Alina, I want you working with Marcus on the financial analysis. You see patterns he doesn't. Between the two of you, we might actually find something." "What about me?" Adrian asked. "You're going to Chen's apartment. He might be dead, but his computer isn't. Find it. Find anything that shows who paid him and why." "The police will be all over it." Lorenzo's smile was cold. "Then make sure you get there first." Adrian nodded and left, leaving Alina alone with Lorenzo. She should have felt uncomfortable. The silence, the weight of everything happening, the dead man whose photo was still burned into her mind. But instead, she felt energized, focused. For the first time in days, they had a direction. "You handled that well," Lorenzo said. "The meeting. Most people would have stayed quiet." "Most people aren't trying to solve a conspiracy." "No, they're not." Lorenzo studied her over the rim of his glass. "You're not what I expected, Alina Russo." "What did you expect?" "Someone more fragile. Vincent's daughter thrust into my world, probably terrified and trying to survive." He set down his glass. "Instead, I got someone who dissects my organization like a case study and isn't afraid to challenge my captains." "Would you prefer fragile?" "I prefer effective. And you're very effective." Lorenzo moved closer, and Alina was reminded of how much physical space he commanded. But effectiveness comes with a cost. The deeper you go into this, the more danger you're in. Whoever killed Chen won't hesitate to kill you if they think you're a threat. I'm already a threat. I was a threat the moment I exposed the forgery. Alina met his gaze steadily. Besides, you promised to protect me. That was part of our deal. I did. And I will. Lorenzo's hand came up, fingers brushing her jaw in a gesture that was almost gentle. But I need you to be smart. Don't take unnecessary risks. Don't trust anyone completely. Not Marcus, not Adrian, not even me. The touch sent an unexpected current through her. Alina stepped back, creating distance. You're telling me not to trust you? I'm telling you that everyone in this world has an agenda. Mine happens to align with yours right now, but that could change. Lorenzo's expression was unreadable. Stay sharp, Mrs. Vance. This game we're playing only gets more dangerous from here. He left her standing in his office, heart pounding for reasons she didn't want to examine. The rest of the day was a blur of financial records and personnel files. Marcus set up a workspace in a conference room, spreading laptops and printouts across a table that could have seated 20. Alina dove into the numbers, looking for patterns, anomalies, anything that didn't fit. Derek's assistant was a woman named Rachel Kim, 28, MBA from NYU, hired 18 months ago. Her salary was $75,000, but her credit card statement showed spending that suggested twice that income. Designer clothes, expensive restaurants. A trip to Monaco 3 months ago. Rachel Kim, Alina said, sliding the file to Marcus. Look at this. Marcus scanned the documents, his expression darkening. Yeah, that's not right. No one lives like this on her salary. Can you trace her other accounts? Already on it, Marcus typed rapidly. She's got 3 bank accounts, 2 domestic, 1 in the Caymans. The Cayman account received deposits totaling $200,000 over the last year. From where? Rooting through. Oh, wait. Marcus's fingers stilled. The deposits traced back to Meridian Holdings. There it was. The connection. Rachel's the leak, Alina said. She's been feeding information to whoever runs Meridian. That's how they knew about the routes, the shipments, everything. Derek's assistant has access to all his files, all his communications. Marcus was already pulling up more data. She could have been skimming with him or separately. Either way, she's dirty. Where is she now? Marcus checked. According to her calendar, she's at the investment office, regular workday. Alina stood. We need to grab her before she runs. Lorenzo will want to handle this himself. Then call him, but we can't wait. If she figures out we're on to her, she'll disappear like Chen. Marcus made the call. Lorenzo answered on the first ring, listened to the brief explanation, and said 3 words. Bring her in. 20 minutes later, Alina was in a car with 2 of Lorenzo's enforcers, heading back into the city. Marcus had stayed behind to keep digging, but he'd given them everything they needed. Rachel's schedule, her usual routes, even her car's license plate. They found her in the parking garage beneath the investment firm's building, walking to her car with her phone pressed to her ear. She looked exactly like her photo, petite, professional, completely unassuming. The enforcers moved fast. One blocked her path. The other took her phone, cutting off whatever conversation she'd been having. Rachel's eyes went wide with fear. Mrs. Vance would like to talk to you, the first enforcer said calmly. Alina stepped out of the car. Hello, Rachel. We need to discuss your finances. Rachel's face drained of color. I don't know what you're talking about. The $200,000 in your Cayman account says otherwise. The deposits from Meridian Holdings. The information you've been selling. Alina kept her voice level, professional. We can do this here, or we can do this somewhere more private. Your choice. Rachel looked at the enforcers, then at Alina, calculating her options. She had none, and they both knew it. Fine, she whispered, but I want a lawyer. You'll get one, after you talk to my husband. They brought Rachel to the estate and put her in a small study on the first floor. Not Lorenzo's office, somewhere more intimate, more intimidating. Alina waited in the hallway while Lorenzo went in alone. Through the door she could hear voices. Rachel's, high and frightened. Lorenzo's, calm and inexorable. Adrian appeared beside her. You found her. Marcus found her. I just helped collect her. Alina glanced at him. Did you get to Chen's apartment? Before the police, thank God. Found his laptop, some burner phones, bank records. Adrian held up a plastic bag with electronics. Marcus is going to love me. What's on them? Don't know yet. Encrypted. But we've got people who can crack it. Adrian looked at the closed door. How long has Lorenzo been in there? 10 minutes. She'll break in 5 more. Lorenzo has a way of making people feel like confession is their only option. Adrian was right. 15 minutes after they'd brought her in, the door opened and Lorenzo emerged, his expression dark. She's been working for them for 18 months, he said without preamble. Someone approached her at a conference, offered her money to pass along information. Shipping schedules, financial records, internal communications. She didn't know who she was really working for. Everything went through encrypted channels and dead drops. Did she know about the forgery? Alina asked. No, she didn't even know about Chen. She just passed information and collected payments. Lorenzo's jaw was tight. But she gave me something useful. The next dead drop is scheduled for tomorrow night. A park in Queens, 11 p.m. She's supposed to deliver Derek's latest quarterly reports. A chance to catch whoever's running her, Adrian said. Exactly. We let Rachel make the drop. We watch. We follow whoever picks it up. Lorenzo looked at Alina. And we finally get a face to go with this conspiracy. Alina felt a chill run through her. Tomorrow night, they might finally know who'd been destroying Lorenzo's empire from the inside. Tomorrow night, everything could change. The hours before the drop crawled by like broken glass. Alina spent most of the day with Marcus, combing through the data from Chen's laptop. The encryption had been good, but not perfect, and Marcus's team had cracked it by noon. What they found was a roadmap of destruction. Emails detailing shipping routes, financial transfers showing the skimming operation, even photographs of warehouse layouts taken from inside Lorenzo's own facilities. But nowhere in the files was a name. Whoever had hired Chen had been careful, using only encrypted messaging services and anonymous payment channels. The digital trail went cold at Meridian Holdings, the same offshore entity they'd been chasing since the beginning. They're a ghost, Marcus said, frustration evident in his voice. Professional-grade operational security. This isn't some amateur playing gangster. This is someone who knows exactly how to stay invisible. Alina stared at the screen, her eyes burning from hours of reading. Rachel said the person who recruited her approached her at a conference. Which conference? Marcus pulled up Rachel's calendar from 18 months ago. Financial Technology Summit in Manhattan. 3-day event. Approximately 5,000 attendees. 5,000 people, Alina murmured. But how many of those would have known she worked for Derek? How many would have had reason to target her specifically? You think the recruiter knew the organization? I think they knew exactly who to approach and when. Rachel wasn't random. She was selected. Alina stood, pacing. Pull the attendee list for that conference. Cross-reference it with anyone connected to Lorenzo's business. Employees, competitors, business partners. Someone on that list knew Rachel would be vulnerable. Marcus's fingers flew across the keyboard. That's going to take time. The conference organizers might not even have the records anymore. Then we get creative. Social media posts, tagged photos, credit card receipts from hotels near the venue. Someone left a trail. They always do. You sound like Lorenzo. Alina stopped pacing. Is that a compliment? Honestly, I'm not sure yet. Marcus glanced at her. But you're good at this. Better than most people he's worked with. You see connections other people miss. Pattern recognition. It's what I do. It's more than that. You think like them. Like the people we're hunting. You understand how they plan, how they cover their tracks. Marcus's expression was unreadable. Makes me wonder what you could do if you decided to go the other direction. You think I'm capable of this? Of destroying an organization from the inside? I think you're capable of a lot of things. Whether you choose to use those skills for or against us, he shrugged. Time will tell. It should have felt like an accusation. Instead, it felt like acknowledgement. Alina returned to the data, but Marcus's words lingered like smoke. She was good at this, frighteningly good. And somewhere in the back of her mind, a small voice whispered that maybe she'd found something she was meant to do, something more than optimizing shipping routes and cutting costs. By evening, the estate had transformed into a command center. Lorenzo's office was filled with maps of queens, surveillance equipment, and enough weapons to stage a small coup. Tony was briefing a team of 6 enforcers on positions and protocols. Sophia had somehow procured night vision gear. Even Carlo had shown up, offering to coordinate communications from a mobile command post. And Adrian stood in the corner, loading a gun with practiced efficiency. Alina watched him, surprised. "I didn't know you carried." Adrian looked up, his usual smile absent. "I don't, usually. That's Lorenzo's department. But tonight feels different. Tonight feels like everything's about to break open." He checked the magazine, slid it home with a decisive click. "I'd rather have it and not need it than the alternative." Lorenzo entered, already dressed in black tactical gear that made him look even more dangerous than usual. His gaze swept the room, cataloging everything, before landing on Alina. "You're staying here," he said. "Not a question." "No." "Alina, you need me there. I'm the only one who's actually seen all the data, who understands the full pattern. If something goes wrong, if the person who shows up isn't who we expect, I'll recognize it faster than anyone else." "She's right," Marcus said from his laptop. "Alina's the best analyst we have. If this goes sideways, she'll spot it first." Lorenzo's expression was thunderous. "This isn't a data analysis exercise. This is a tactical operation. People could get hurt." "People are already getting hurt. Chen's dead. My father's sick. Your empire is falling apart." Alina moved closer, meeting Lorenzo's gaze without flinching. "I'm not staying behind while you risk everything. We're partners in this, remember? That was the deal." The room had gone silent. Everyone was watching them, this battle of wills between the crime boss and his unexpected wife. Finally, Lorenzo exhaled sharply. "Fine, but you stay in the vehicle with Marcus. You don't move unless I say so. And if shooting starts, you hit the floor. Understood?" "Understood." "I mean it, Alina. You do exactly what I tell you, when I tell you, or I will have someone physically carry you back to this estate." "I said I understood." Lorenzo held her gaze for another moment, then turned to the team. "Let's move." The park in Queens was one of those forgotten urban spaces. Overgrown paths, broken streetlights, benches covered in graffiti. At 11 p.m., it was deserted except for the occasional distant sound of traffic. Rachel had been clear about the location, a bench near the east entrance, beneath a dying oak tree. Third plank from the left had a hollow underneath where she left the documents. They'd arrived an hour early to set positions. Tony and 2 enforcers had taken up spots with clear sightlines to the bench. Adrian was in the shadows near the entrance, watching the approach. Sophia coordinated from a van 2 blocks away. And Alina sat with Marcus in an SUV 50 yards from the drop point, night vision binoculars in hand, heart hammering against her ribs. Lorenzo was somewhere in the dark. Alina couldn't see him, but she could feel his presence like a pressure change before a storm. "Rachel's approaching," Marcus said quietly, watching a screen that showed feeds from multiple hidden cameras. Alina raised the binoculars. Rachel walked down the path like a woman heading to her execution, shoulders hunched, movements jerky with fear. She carried a manila envelope, Derek's quarterly reports, just like she'd promised. At the bench, she hesitated, looking around with obvious terror. "She's going to bolt," Alina murmured. "No, she knows what happens if she runs." Marcus's voice was matter-of-fact. Lorenzo made that very clear. Rachel knelt by the bench, reached under the 3rd plank, and deposited the envelope. Then she straightened and walked away quickly, not looking back. "Drop made," Tony's voice crackled through the radio. "Target has left the area." Now came the waiting. Minutes crawled by. Alina's hands were sweating on the binoculars. Every shadow looked like movement, every sound like footsteps. Beside her, Marcus was utterly still, his attention fixed on the screens. At 11:43, someone appeared. They came from the west, moving with confident purpose. Even through the night vision distortion, Alina could see it was a man. Tall, athletic build, wearing dark clothes and a baseball cap pulled low. He walked directly to the bench, no hesitation, like he'd done this 100 times. "We have contact," Marcus said into the radio. "Single male, approaching the drop point now." The man reached under the bench, retrieved the envelope, and started to turn away. "All units, converge," Lorenzo's voice came through, calm and absolute. Take him alive. Everything happened at once. Tony and his team emerged from the shadows like wolves. Adrian blocked the exit path. The man saw them coming and ran, sprinting toward the tree line with impressive speed. One of the enforcers gave chase, closing the distance with brutal efficiency. They tackled him 15 feet from the trees. The man fought like a professional. Quick, economical movements designed for maximum damage. He got one enforcer in the throat with an elbow, spun away from another's grab, nearly made it back to his feet before Tony caught him with a punch that echoed across the park. Then Lorenzo was there, and the fight ended. He didn't say anything, didn't need to. He simply pressed a gun to the man's temple, and the struggling stopped instantly. "Who sent you?" Lorenzo's voice was conversational, like he was asking about the weather. The man spat blood. "Go to hell. Eventually, but you first." Lorenzo cocked the gun. "Last chance. Who's running Meridian Holdings?" The man laughed, a wet, broken sound. "You're so close and you still don't see it. Pathetic." Alina's breath caught. That voice, she knew that voice. She was out of the SUV before Marcus could stop her, running toward the group, binoculars forgotten. Lorenzo looked up sharply as she approached, his expression furious. "I told you to stay." "Let me see his face," Alina demanded. Lorenzo hesitated, then nodded to Tony, who yanked off the baseball cap. The man's face was bloodied but recognizable. Mid-30s, sharp features, eyes that held more calculation than fear. And Alina knew him. "Daniel Carter," she said, her voice hollow. "My father's former head of security." The revelation hung in the air like a detonation. Daniel smiled through broken teeth. "Hello, Alina. Been a while." Lorenzo looked between them. "You know him." "He worked for my father for 5 years. Handled all our security protocols, personnel vetting, facility access." Alina's mind was racing. "He left 8 months ago. Dad said it was amicable, that Daniel wanted to pursue other opportunities. Other opportunities like destroying the Russo family from the inside," Daniel said. "Your father was so trusting, so easy to manipulate. All those years I had access to everything, client lists, financial records, security codes. I knew every weakness in his operation." "Why?" Alina's voice shook. "My father trusted you. He treated you like family." "Your father was weak. A criminal playing at being legitimate, making just enough dirty money to fund his moral crusade. It was insulting." Daniel's smile widened. But his connections were valuable. His logistics network, his shipping routes, his relationships with families like the Vances. All I had to do was wait for the right moment to leverage them. Lorenzo pressed the gun harder against Daniel's skull. "Who are you working for?" "That's the best part." Daniel's eyes gleamed with something like triumph. "I'm not working for anyone. I'm working with someone. Someone who's been part of your organization longer than you've been alive. Someone you trust completely." The temperature seemed to drop 20 degrees. "Lying won't save you," Lorenzo said quietly. "I'm not lying. Why do you think this has been so easy? Why do you think every move you make, we're 3 steps ahead?" Daniel looked at Alina. "The forgery was brilliant, wasn't it? Put you right where we wanted you, inside Lorenzo's house, analyzing his operation, feeding us information without even knowing it." "I haven't fed anyone anything," Alina said. "Haven't you? Every question you've asked, every file you've accessed, every conversation you've had, it's all been observed, recorded, analyzed." Daniel's gaze shifted to someone behind Lorenzo. "Isn't that right?" Alina turned, following his look. Adrian stood at the edge of the group, his gun still holstered, his expression unreadable. "Adrian?" Lorenzo's voice was very carefully controlled. "I'm sorry, brother." Adrian's hand moved to his weapon, but he didn't draw it. "I really am." The world seemed to stop. Lorenzo's gun didn't waver from Daniel's head, but his attention was wholly on his brother. "Tell me you're not part of this." "I didn't want it to be like this. I tried to keep you out of it, tried to make it clean." Adrian's usual charm was gone, replaced by something harder. "But you wouldn't let it go. You kept digging, kept investigating, and then you brought her in." He looked at Alina with something that might have been regret. "That complicated things." "How long?" Lorenzo's voice was barely above a whisper. 2 years, since Derek started skimming. That was me, Lorenzo. My operation. I recruited him, set up Meridian Holdings, built the whole infrastructure. Adrian finally drew his gun, but he kept it pointed at the ground. I've been preparing to take over for 2 years, building alliances, securing resources, positioning myself as the acceptable alternative when you inevitably fell. Tony stepped forward. You traitorous piece of... Stay back, Tony. Adrian's gun came up slightly, not quite aiming but making the threat clear. I don't want to hurt anyone. That was never the plan. The plan was a quiet transition. Lorenzo steps down, I step up, and the organization continues stronger than before. By destroying everything I've built, Lorenzo's voice was ice. By modernizing what you've built. You're stuck in the old ways, Lorenzo. Violence and intimidation and ruling through fear. It's not sustainable. I've been building something better. Legitimate businesses, political connections, a future where we don't have to hide in the shadows. Adrian's expression was almost pleading. I wanted you to see that, to step aside willingly and let me show you what we could become. So you forged a contract to drag an innocent woman into this? Alina was never innocent. She's Vincent Russo's daughter, trained to see patterns and solve problems. I knew if I put her in your house, she'd either help me dismantle your operation from the inside or force you to reveal your weaknesses trying to protect her. Adrian looked at Alina. I underestimated you, though. I thought you'd be a pawn. Instead, you became a player. Alina felt like the ground had opened beneath her. All those conversations with Adrian, his easy charm, his helpful advice, his warnings about trusting Lorenzo, it had all been manipulation. The warehouse hits, Lorenzo said, his voice deadly calm. The stolen shipments, Chen's murder, that was all you? Chen was Daniel's call. I would have preferred to keep him alive, but he was too exposed. Adrian shrugged. The rest, yes. Carefully orchestrated to weaken your position, make your captains question your leadership, create openings for me to demonstrate I could handle things better. And now? Lorenzo asked. What's your play now, Adrian? You've been exposed. Your conspiracy is falling apart. What exactly do you think happens next? Adrian's smile was sad. Now I offer you a choice, brother. Walk away. Step down as head of the family, and I'll let you live. You can keep the estate, a comfortable income, even some advisory role if you want. But the organization becomes mine. And if I refuse, then this gets messy. I have support, Lorenzo, more than you know. Half your captains are ready to flip the moment I give the word. Your loyal lieutenants, Marcus, Tony, Sophia, they're all brave and competent, but they're outnumbered. If you force a war, you'll lose. You're bluffing. Am I? Adrian's expression hardened. You want proof? Where's Marcus right now? Lorenzo's face went very still. Alina's blood turned to ice. Marcus had been in the SU-5 with her. He'd stayed behind when she ran to see Daniel's face. And now... She turned and looked back toward the vehicle. The SUV's doors were open. Marcus was gone. I had people pick him up the moment you left the vehicle, Adrian said. He's alive, unharmed, and will stay that way as long as you're reasonable. But that's just one example. I have contingencies in place. People loyal to me in every level of your organization. You fight me, and you fight half your own family. Lorenzo stood slowly, the gun still trained on Daniel. When he spoke, his voice was very quiet and more terrifying for it. You kidnapped Marcus. I secured a valuable asset to demonstrate that I'm serious. No one's been hurt, Lorenzo. No one has to be hurt. This can end peacefully. Adrian took a step forward. Please, I don't want to destroy you. You're my brother. I'm offering you a way out that lets us both walk away alive. After you've betrayed everything we built. After I've saved everything you were too stubborn to evolve. Adrian's voice rose slightly. Our father's way is dead, Lorenzo. Violence and fear don't work anymore. The world's changed. I'm trying to change us with it, but you won't let go of the old ways. You'd rather go down fighting than admit someone else might have a better vision. For a long moment, no one moved. The park was silent except for distant traffic and Daniel's labored breathing. Then Lorenzo lowered his gun. You're right, he said quietly. You're absolutely right, Adrian. Adrian's expression flickered with hope. So you'll step down? No. Lorenzo's smile was terrible. I'm agreeing that you're correct about one thing. The world has changed. But you're wrong about everything else. He moved faster than Alina had ever seen him move, the gun swinging up not toward Adrian, but toward the shadows behind him. The shot cracked across the park, and someone screamed. A figure stumbled out of the darkness, one of Adrian's people, trying to flank them. Lorenzo's bullet had caught them in the shoulder. Did you really think I wouldn't have counters in place? Lorenzo's voice was conversational again. That I wouldn't have my own people watching yours? Marcus isn't alone, Adrian. I have a team at his location right now, and they're very good at what they do. As if on cue, Lorenzo's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then smiled without humor. Marcus is secure. Your people have been neutralized. So much for your leverage. Adrian's face went pale. Lorenzo, and as for your supporters in my organization? Lorenzo looked at Tony, who was already on his phone. Tony's been quietly recording this entire conversation. It's already been transmitted to every captain, every lieutenant, every person you thought you'd turned against me. They're hearing you confess to 2 years of betrayal. How many do you think will still support you now? The pieces fell into place with brutal clarity. This had been Lorenzo's play all along, not just to catch the traitor, but to expose them so completely that no one could claim ignorance or split loyalty. Adrian seemed to realize it at the same moment. His gun came up, but he was too slow. Tony moved first, his weapon trained on Adrian with steady hands. Don't, Tony said simply. Adrian looked at his brother, and something broke in his expression. I was trying to save you. By destroying me. Lorenzo's voice was soft, almost gentle. That's not salvation, Adrian. That's murder wrapped in good intentions. You would have done the same thing if our positions were reversed. No, I would have talked to you. I would have been honest about my concerns. I would have trusted that we could find a solution together. Lorenzo's expression was infinitely sad. But you never trusted me, did you? You spent 2 years lying, manipulating, destroying everything we built because you couldn't have a single honest conversation with your own brother. You never would have listened. You never gave me the chance. The words came out like a whip crack. Lorenzo visibly controlled himself, his voice dropping back to that deadly calm. You assumed. You decided what I would or wouldn't do, and you built an entire conspiracy around those assumptions. And now people are dead. My organization is in chaos. And you're standing here with a gun, still thinking you had the right to make those choices for everyone. Adrian's hand trembled. What now? Now you put down the weapon. Now you tell me everything. Every person you recruited, every operation you've compromised, every secret you've sold. And then... Lorenzo's jaw tightened. Then I decide whether you live or die. For a terrible moment, Alina thought Adrian might shoot. His finger twitched on the trigger, his eyes wild with trapped animal desperation. Then his shoulders slumped, and he let the gun fall to the ground. I'll tell you everything, he said quietly. Every name, every operation, all of it. Good. Lorenzo gestured, and 2 enforcers moved forward to secure Adrian. Take him to the estate. Lock him in the east wing. No one sees him. No one talks to him until I get there. As they led Adrian away, he called back, I really was trying to save you, Lorenzo. Lorenzo didn't respond. Daniel, still on the ground with a gun to his head, laughed weakly. Family loyalty. Beautiful thing, isn't it? Shut up. Lorenzo looked at Tony. Take him to the facility. Marcus will want to have a very long conversation with him about exactly what he's been doing for the last 2 years. With pleasure, boss. They hauled Daniel to his feet and dragged him toward a waiting van. Alina watched them go, her mind still reeling from everything that had just happened. When they were alone, Lorenzo finally holstered his weapon. He looked exhausted, years older than he had an hour ago. I'm sorry, Alina said quietly. For what? For Adrian. I know he's your brother. He was my brother. Now he's just another traitor. Lorenzo's voice was flat, emotionless. He should have seen it. All the signs were there. His push for legitimization, his friendliness with you, his convenient absences during the warehouse hits. I should have known. He's family. You trusted him. That's not weakness. In my world, it is. Lorenzo looked at her, and for the first time she saw real vulnerability in his eyes. I told you to trust no one. I should have followed my own advice. Alina moved closer, close enough to feel the heat radiating off him despite the cool night air. You also said everyone has an agenda. Adrian's was wrong, but at least it's over now. Is it? Lorenzo's smile was bitter. He said he had support at every level. Even if half of them turn after hearing the recording, that's still dozens of people I can't trust. My organization is infected, Alina. It's going to take months to cut out all the rot. Then we cut it out. Together. We. Lorenzo's hand came up, cupping her face with unexpected gentleness. When did this become we? When you married me. When you trusted me with your empire. When you let me be part of this instead of keeping me locked away like a porcelain doll. Alina leaned into the touch without thinking. We're partners, remember? That's what you said. I said a lot of things. Most of them were tactics. Were they? Lorenzo was quiet for a long moment, his thumb brushing her cheekbone. I don't know anymore. The admission hung between them, fragile and dangerous. Then Lorenzo's phone rang, shattering the moment. He answered it, listened briefly, and his expression hardened. I'll be right there. What is it? Alina asked. Marcus interrogated 2 of Adrian's lieutenants. They gave up names. Lorenzo was already moving toward the vehicles. We have work to do. The purge began that night and continued for 3 days. Every person Adrian had compromised was identified, interrogated, and dealt with. Some were merely fired. Others faced harsher consequences. Derek was gone within hours, his assets seized, his reputation destroyed. Rachel disappeared entirely, though Alina suspected she'd been given a choice between exile and something worse. The organization bled personnel, but what remained was loyal, tested, stronger. Alina worked alongside Marcus and Lorenzo through all of it, analyzing confessions, cross-referencing claims, building a complete picture of Adrian's conspiracy. It was massive. 2 years of careful recruitment, bribery, and manipulation. Adrian had been thorough, methodical, and almost successful. Almost. On the 4th day, Lorenzo called a meeting of all remaining captains. The dining room was full again, but the faces were different. Some of the old guard were gone. New people had risen to fill the gaps, people who'd proven their loyalty when it mattered. Lorenzo stood at the head of the table, and the room fell silent. For 2 years we were infiltrated, he said without preamble. Someone we trusted, someone I loved, tried to destroy us from within. They failed. We survived. But survival isn't enough. His gaze swept the room. We're going to rebuild, stronger, smarter. And anyone who even thinks about betrayal will learn exactly what happens to traitors. It wasn't a threat. It was a promise. After the meeting, Alina found herself alone with Lorenzo in his office. He poured 2 glasses of bourbon and handed her one without asking if she wanted it. What happens to Adrian? She asked. Lorenzo was quiet for a long moment. He's my brother. That still means something, even after everything. So you'll let him live. I'll let him exist. Exile. Stripped of everything, money, power, connections. He'll disappear into whatever life people like us have when we lose everything. Lorenzo stared into his glass. It's more mercy than he deserves. It's more mercy than most people would give. I'm not most people. Lorenzo looked at her. The contract, the forged one that started all this. It's done its job. Adrian's exposed, the conspiracy's dismantled, your father's name is cleared. You're free to leave. Alina had known this moment was coming. The marriage had been transactional from the start. She'd completed her end of the bargain. She could walk away, return to her old life, pretend none of this had ever happened. She should want that. What if I don't want to leave? She heard herself say. Lorenzo went very still. What? What if I want to stay? Not because of the contract, not because I have to, but because... Alina struggled to find words for the truth that had been growing inside her for days. Because this feels right. Working with you, solving problems, being part of something bigger than shipping routes and quarterly reports. Alina, this isn't your world. Maybe it is now. She set down her glass and moved closer. You said I was good at this, that I saw things other people missed. You were right, and I don't want to go back to being invisible in my father's company, optimizing someone else's vision. I want this. The challenge, the purpose, the partnership. The danger, Lorenzo added, the violence, The moral compromises. Yes, all of it. Alina met his eyes. I'm not naive, Lorenzo. I know what I'm choosing, but I'm choosing it anyway. I'm choosing you. Something shifted in Lorenzo's expression, the careful control cracking to reveal something raw underneath. This is real, he said. Not a question. This is real. Lorenzo crossed the distance between them in 2 strides, his hands framing her face, his eyes searching hers for any hint of doubt. He must not have found any, because when he kissed her, it wasn't like their wedding, clinical and transactional. This was heat and hunger, and something that felt dangerously like hope. Alina kissed him back with everything she had, all the fear and adrenaline and desperate need for something solid in a world that had turned upside down. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Lorenzo's forehead rested against hers. If you stay, he said quietly, there's no going back. This life doesn't let you walk away twice. Then I won't walk away at all. Your father will understand or he won't, but this is my choice to make. Lorenzo pulled back enough to look at her properly. Then make it official, not as collateral, not as part of a deal. Choose this. Choose me. Choose us. Alina smiled, feeling something fierce and bright unfold in her chest. I already did. Outside, dawn was breaking over the estate, painting everything in shades of gold and promise. Somewhere in the East Wing, Adrian waited for his exile. Somewhere in the city, the remnants of his conspiracy were being systematically erased. And somewhere in the future, there would be new threats, new challenges, new battles to fight. But right now, in this moment, Alina felt something she hadn't felt in years. She felt like she was exactly where she belonged. The morning after her declaration, Alina woke to find Lorenzo already gone from the bed they'd shared for the first time as something more than contractual partners. A note sat on his pillow in sharp, precise handwriting. Council meeting at 9. Your presence is required. Wear armor. She smiled despite herself. In Lorenzo's world, armor meant the Navy Armani suit hanging in her closet and the confidence to walk into a room full of dangerous men without flinching. By 8:45, she was ready. The council chamber was in the estate's west wing, a room Alina had never entered before. Dark wood paneling, a table that could seat 20, and an atmosphere thick enough to cut with a knife. Every captain who'd survived Adrian's purge was there. Marcus, Tony, Sophia, Carlo, and half a dozen others whose loyalty had been tested and proven. They all stood when Lorenzo entered with Alina at his side. Sit, Lorenzo said, and they did. He remained standing, Alina beside him, a united front. 3 days ago, we cut out a cancer that had been growing in this organization for 2 years. Adrian Vance, my brother, betrayed us. He's been dealt with. But his conspiracy revealed something important. We've been operating on old assumptions, old vulnerabilities. That ends today. Lorenzo gestured to Alina. Most of you have met my wife. Some of you have worked with her. All of you have heard what she's capable of. What you don't know is that as of this morning, she's no longer just my wife. She's my partner in every sense of the word. She'll have full authority over operations, strategy, and personnel. Her word carries the same weight as mine. The silence was deafening. Tony was the first to speak. With respect, boss, she's been here less than a week. We don't know... You don't know if you can trust her, Alina finished. I understand that. I wouldn't trust me either. She moved to the table, placing both hands flat on the polished surface. So let me be clear. I'm not asking for your trust. I'm earning it. Starting now. She nodded to Marcus, who pulled up a screen showing a complex organizational chart. This is Adrian's network. Every person he compromised, every operation he touched, every weakness he exploited. We've dealt with the obvious problems. But there are deeper issues. Structural flaws in how we operate that made Adrian's conspiracy possible in the first place. Alina highlighted several points on the chart. Your shipping operation relies on a single point of failure, Sophia's facility. If something happens to her or that location, everything collapses. Your financial operations run through Derek's office, and even with him gone, the systems he built are still vulnerable. Your communication protocols are inconsistent, which means information leaks even from loyal personnel. Sophia leaned forward. You're saying we need to rebuild from the ground up. I'm saying we need to evolve, redundancy in critical operations, compartmentalization of sensitive information, better vetting protocols for new personnel, and most importantly, Alina looked around the table, transparency within this group. No more secrets between the people in this room. Adrian succeeded because he exploited the gaps between you. We close those gaps, we become unbreakable. Carlo was nodding slowly. It's solid strategy, but implementing it will take time. Months, maybe years. Then we start today, Lorenzo said. Marcus, you'll work with Alina on the new security protocols. Sophia, we're diversifying the shipping operation. I want 3 facilities running within 6 months. Tony, communication overhaul is yours. Carlo, you're expanding the legitimate businesses to create better cover and revenue streams. Orders given, plans set in motion. The meeting continued for another hour, hammering out details, addressing concerns, building consensus. By the time it ended, Alina could see the shift in how the captains looked at her. Not quite trust, not yet, but respect. Recognition that she belonged at that table. As people filed out, Marcus hung back. That was good work, he said quietly. The structural analysis. I've been thinking the same things for months, but couldn't figure out how to say them without sounding like I was questioning Lorenzo's leadership. The advantage of being new, Alina said. I can say uncomfortable truths because I don't have years of loyalty weighing down every word. Use that while you can. Eventually, you'll be just as invested as the rest of us. Marcus glanced toward Lorenzo, who was speaking with Carlo. He's different with you, more human. I didn't think that was possible. Everyone's human, Marcus. Some people just hide it better. Maybe. Or maybe some people forgot how to be human until someone reminded them. Marcus nodded once and left. Alina found herself alone with Lorenzo in the empty council chamber. He was staring at the organizational chart still displayed on the screen, his expression unreadable. You didn't tell me you were going to announce me as your partner, Alina said. Would you have objected? No, but a heads up would have been nice. Lorenzo's mouth twitched. I'm not used to consulting people before making decisions. Get used to it. You said we're partners. That means we talk before making major plays. Even when I'm right? Especially when you're right. Your instincts are good, Lorenzo, but you have blind spots. Everyone does. That's what partners are for, covering each other's vulnerabilities. Lorenzo turned to face her fully. My father would have laughed at that. He believed showing vulnerability was suicide. Your father built an empire on fear. You're building one on loyalty. There's a difference. Is there? Fear kept people in line. Loyalty failed me with Adrian. Adrian's loyalty was never real. He resented you from the start. Alina moved closer. But the people who stayed when they could have run? Marcus, Tony, Sophia, Carlo? That's real loyalty. They chose you even when choosing you was dangerous. You can't buy that with fear. Lorenzo was quiet for a long moment, processing. Then, my father is the reason Adrian turned out the way he did. The constant comparison, the favoritism, the message that only one of us could be strong. I tried to be different with him, tried to be a brother instead of a rival, but the damage was already done. You can't save people from themselves, Lorenzo. Adrian made his choices, you made yours, and now we deal with the consequences. Consequences. Lorenzo's laugh was bitter. Exile seemed like mercy at the time. Now I'm not so sure. Maybe I should have. Don't! Alina cut him off. Don't second-guess yourself. You chose to let him live because despite everything, he's still your brother. That's not weakness. That's humanity. Hold on to that. Lorenzo's hand found hers, fingers lacing together. And if that humanity gets us killed, then at least we die as people, not monsters. The words hung between them, heavy with meaning. Then Lorenzo's phone buzzed, shattering the moment. He checked it, and his expression hardened. It's time. Adrian's leaving. They watched from Lorenzo's office window as a black sedan pulled up to the estate's front entrance. 2 enforcers emerged, followed by Adrian. He looked smaller somehow, stripped of his expensive clothes and easy charm. They'd given him simple jeans and a jacket, the clothes of someone ordinary, someone forgettable. Adrian looked up at the window where Lorenzo stood, and even from a distance, Alina could see the regret in his expression. He raised one hand, not a wave exactly, more like acknowledgement, an ending. Lorenzo didn't respond. He simply watched as his brother got into the sedan and disappeared down the long driveway. "Where will he go?" Alina asked quietly. "Somewhere far away. Somewhere he can start over with nothing." Lorenzo's voice was emotionless. "He has enough money for a year, maybe two if he's careful. After that, he's on his own. No family, no connections, no power, just survival." "That's cruel. That's mercy." Lorenzo turned away from the window. "In this world, betrayal usually ends in blood. I gave him life. What he does with it is up to him." Alina wanted to say something comforting, something that would ease the pain she could see beneath Lorenzo's controlled exterior. But some wounds didn't heal with words. Some losses had to be carried. Instead, she took his hand and held it, a silent promise that he wasn't carrying this alone. The next weeks passed in a blur of reconstruction. Alina threw herself into the work of rebuilding the organization's infrastructure, spending 14-hour days analyzing systems, interviewing personnel, designing new protocols. She discovered she had a talent for seeing not just what was, but what could be, turning Lorenzo's empire from a collection of loosely connected operations into a genuine, efficient machine. Sophia's shipping operation expanded to 3 facilities within a month. Tony implemented encrypted communication systems that would take a government agency months to crack. Carlo opened 2 new restaurants that served as perfect fronts for laundering money and hosting sensitive meetings. And Marcus built a security apparatus so thorough that even a conspiracy as sophisticated as Adrian's would struggle to penetrate it. Through it all, Lorenzo was there, not micromanaging, but supporting, trusting Alina's judgment even when it contradicted his instincts, learning to share power instead of hoarding it. Their partnership evolved from strategic to something deeper. Nights in Lorenzo's office became strategy sessions that turned into conversations about childhood, about dreams, about the people they might have been in different circumstances. The marriage that had started as a business transaction transformed into something neither of them had names for yet, something built on respect and shared purpose, and the kind of trust that only came from surviving fire together. 6 weeks after Adrian's exile, Vincent Russo was finally well enough to leave the medical facility where Lorenzo's people had been caring for him. Alina went to collect him, nervous in a way she hadn't been since the night of the forged contract. Her father looked better than he had in months, color in his face, strength in his movements. But when he saw her, his expression was complicated. "Alina." He pulled her into a hug that lasted long enough to say everything words couldn't. "I've been so worried." "I'm fine, Dad. Better than fine." Vincent pulled back, studying her face. "Lorenzo's people wouldn't tell me much, just that the contract was fake, that someone had set us both up, and that you were helping to sort it out." His voice dropped. "They also said you married him." "I did." "Because of the contract?" "At first, yes. But things changed." Alina took her father's hand. "I need to tell you everything. And you need to listen before you judge." They sat in the facility's garden, and Alina laid it all out. The forgery, the investigation, Adrian's betrayal, Daniel Carter's role in destroying the Russo business from the inside. She told him about the conspiracy that had been dismantling his company for months while he thought he was losing his mind. She told him about the choice she'd made to stay with Lorenzo not because she had to, but because she wanted to. Vincent listened without interrupting, his expression cycling through shock, anger, grief, and finally something like understanding. "Daniel," he said when she finished, "I trusted him completely." "I know. He used that trust to access everything you'd built. The good news is that we've recovered most of what was stolen. Your company is still viable, Dad. The logistics network, the client relationships, the infrastructure, it's all still there. It just needs someone to run it." "Someone like you?" Vincent said quietly. "No, someone like you. This is your company, Dad. Your legacy. I can help rebuild it, restructure it, make it stronger. But it's yours." Vincent was quiet for a long moment, looking at his daughter like he was seeing her for the first time. "When did you grow up?" "When I had to," Alina smiled. "When the world demanded it." "And Lorenzo? What does he get out of this arrangement?" "A partner. Someone who sees the world the way he does, but isn't afraid to challenge him. Someone who can help him build something better than what his father left him." Alina met her father's gaze steadily. "I love him, Dad. I didn't plan to. It wasn't part of the deal, but I do. Vincent's expression softened. Does he love you? I think so. He hasn't said it yet. Lorenzo's not good with words like that. But the way he looks at me, the way he trusts me with everything he's built, I think that's his version of love. And you're happy? Truly? Happier than I've been in years. I'm using everything you taught me, Dad. Every lesson about patterns and systems and seeing what other people miss. But I'm using it to build something that matters. Something bigger than quarterly reports and shipping efficiency. Vincent pulled her into another hug. Then I'm proud of you. And I approve. Even if the man you married is the most dangerous person I've ever met. He's not as dangerous as people think. He's just been alone for too long. They spent another hour talking through the details of restoring the Russo company. Lorenzo had already prepared a comprehensive plan, returning all stolen assets, clearing Vincent's name with business partners, even providing capital to cover the losses Daniel had caused. It was more than generous. It was a peace offering from a man who understood the value of family, even if his own had betrayed him. When Alina returned to the estate that evening, she found Lorenzo in the garden, standing by the fountain where they'd walked that first night. He looked up when she approached, and something in his expression made her heart catch. My father approves, she said. Of us. Of everything. I'm glad. Lorenzo's voice was carefully neutral. He also said you're the most dangerous person he's ever met. He's not wrong. Alina moved closer, close enough to feel the warmth of him in the cool evening air. You're also the most honorable person I've ever met. You gave my father back everything Daniel stole. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. Because it matters to you. And what matters to you? Lorenzo's hand came up, cupping her face with that gentle touch that still surprised her. What matters to you matters to me. Lorenzo, let me say this. His thumb brushed her cheekbone. I'm not good at this. At feelings, at vulnerability, at any of the things that normal people seem to do without thinking. My father beat emotions out of me before I was 10, taught me that caring about people was weakness, that love was a liability, and for years I believed him. He took a breath, and Alina could see how much this cost him. But then you walked into my office with your forged contract and your sharp mind and your complete refusal to be intimidated, and you dismantled every wall I'd spent my life building like they were made of paper. Lorenzo's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. I don't know if I'm capable of love the way other people experience it, but what I feel for you, it's the closest thing I've ever felt to it. You make me want to be better, not for the organization, not for the empire, but for you, because you deserve someone who's worthy of the choice you made. Alina's vision blurred with tears she refused to let fall. You are worthy. You always have been. You just couldn't see it. I see it when you look at me. I see it when you challenge me to be more than my father's son. I see it when you trust me with your father's life, your future, your heart. Lorenzo's forehead touched hers. I love you, Alina. I don't know if I'm saying it right, but it's true. I love you. The words hung in the air between them, precious and terrifying and absolutely perfect. I love you too, Alina said, and kissed him with everything she had, all the fear and hope and desperate joy of finding something she hadn't known she was searching for. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Lorenzo smiled. It was the most genuine smile she'd ever seen from him, unburdened by calculation or control. So what now? He asked. Now we build. Together. An empire that's worthy of both of us. One that helps people instead of just using them. One that proves your father was wrong about everything. Lorenzo's smile turned sharper. Ambitious. You married an ambitious woman. What did you expect? Exactly this. 3 months later, Alina stood in front of a room full of investors and business leaders, presenting the new joint venture between Vance Logistics and Russo Distribution. On paper, it was a straightforward business partnership, combining resources to create the most efficient shipping network on the eastern seaboard. In reality, it was the first step in Lorenzo's plan to legitimize his empire, to build something that could survive in the light instead of just the shadows. Vincent sat in the front row, looking stronger than he had in years. Beside him was Marcus, there to ensure everything went smoothly. In the back, barely visible, stood Tony and two other enforcers, a reminder that even in the legitimate world, protection was necessary. And next to the podium, watching with that focused intensity that made her heart race, was Lorenzo. Alina finished her presentation to enthusiastic applause. The investors were excited about projected profits and market expansion. They had no idea they were investing in a crime boss's redemption, and that was exactly how it needed to be. After the meeting, as people mingled and networked, Lorenzo pulled Alina aside into a quiet corner. "That was perfect," he said. "You've turned us into a legitimate corporation in 3 months. It's remarkable. We're not fully legitimate yet. We still have the other operations. We have time. Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither is a legal empire." Lorenzo's hand found hers, fingers lacing together in a gesture that had become comfortable, natural. "Besides, I've been thinking about the next phase." "What next phase?" "The foundation. Using our resources to help people like we were helped. Families destroyed by people like Daniel, communities gutted by corrupt systems. Making a real difference instead of just taking up space in the world." Lorenzo's expression was serious. "It was your idea, remember? From that first night when you said we could be better than my father ever was." Alina remembered. She'd said it without thinking, throwing words into the dark. But Lorenzo had caught them and held on to them, building plans around a future she'd barely dared to imagine. "The Vance Foundation," she said slowly, "for economic development and family services." "Exactly. With you running it, you have the analytical skills to identify where help is needed most, and I have the resources to make it happen." Lorenzo smiled. "Partners, remember?" "Partners," Alina agreed, and kissed him right there in the conference center hallway, not caring who saw. The foundation launched 6 months later with a mission statement that would have made Lorenzo's father roll in his grave: empowering communities through economic opportunity, family support, and systemic change. It started small: scholarships for kids from broken homes, microloans for small businesses in struggling neighborhoods, support services for families dealing with addiction and abuse. But it grew. Within a year, the Vance Foundation was operating in 3 states, helping hundreds of families rebuild their lives. And with each success story, Lorenzo transformed a little more, the hard edges softening, the careful control giving way to something that looked almost like peace. Alina watched him speak at a foundation event 2 years after that first forged contract had landed on the table, and she barely recognized the man he'd become. He was still dangerous when he needed to be, still ruthless in protecting what was his. But he was also generous, thoughtful, capable of kindness that didn't come with strings attached. He'd become the man his father had never let him be. That night, lying in bed in the master suite they now shared without question, Lorenzo pulled Alina close and said something he'd never said before. "Thank you." "For what?" "For seeing who I could be instead of who I was. For choosing to stay when you could have run. For building this life with me." His hand rested over her heart, feeling the steady beat. "For saving me." "We saved each other," Alina corrected. "I was disappearing in my old life, becoming invisible. You gave me purpose, power, a chance to matter. You always mattered." "Maybe, but now I know it." They lay in comfortable silence for a while. 2 people who'd been strangers 6 months ago and were now so entwined that Alina couldn't imagine existence without him. "Do you ever regret it?" Lorenzo asked quietly. "The choice you made? The life you gave up?" Alina thought about it honestly. Her old apartment with its lonely nights and Excel spreadsheets, the quiet desperation of optimizing other people's dreams while her own withered, the safety of invisibility that had really been a prison. "Not even for a second," she said. "This is where I belong. With you. Building something that matters. I wouldn't trade this for anything." Lorenzo's arms tightened around her. "Neither would I." They fell asleep like that, wrapped in each other and the empire they'd built together. An empire that had started with a forged contract and a dangerous deal, and had transformed into something neither of them had expected. Something real, something lasting, something that belonged to both of them equally. Years later, when people asked how Alina Russo became Alina Vance, she never told them about the forgery or the conspiracy or the brothers' betrayal. Those stories belonged to them alone, kept safe in the vault of their shared history. Instead, She'd smile and say something about unexpected opportunities and taking chances on impossible partnerships. But privately, in the quiet moments when it was just the two of them, she'd remember the night Lorenzo had held a gun to someone's head while looking at her like she was the answer to a question he'd been afraid to ask. She'd remember the moment she'd chosen to stay instead of run. And she'd remember that sometimes the most dangerous deals turned out to be the ones that saved you. The forged contract that had threatened to destroy them both had become the foundation of something unbreakable. A partnership built on trust and respect and the kind of love that only came from walking through fire together and choosing to stay even when the flames burned hottest. Lorenzo had been right about one thing that first night. The contract had changed everything. Just not in the way anyone expected. It had turned two people who should have been enemies into partners. It had transformed a crime boss into a philanthropist. It had given an invisible woman the power to build something that mattered. And it had proven that sometimes the best things in life started with the most impossible circumstances. Alina looked at Lorenzo across the Foundation's latest fundraising gala, watching him speak with donors and community leaders with the same intensity he'd once reserved for interrogating enemies. He caught her eye and smiled, that rare, genuine smile that still made her heart skip, and she smiled back. They'd built this together, an empire of legitimacy rising from the ashes of violence, a foundation helping hundreds of families build better lives, a partnership that had started as survival and become something neither of them could live without. The forged contract was long gone, destroyed in the purge that had followed Adrian's exposure. But what it had created remained. Love, purpose, power, partnership. Everything they'd built together. And everything they'd become for each other. The game they'd been forced to play had transformed into something real. The marriage of convenience had become a marriage of choice, and the strangers thrust together by circumstance had become soulmates forged in fire. Lorenzo crossed the room to her, his hand finding hers with practiced ease. "Ready to go home?" he asked. Alina looked around at the foundation they'd built, the people they'd helped, the empire they'd transformed. Then she looked at the man beside her, dangerous and honorable, ruthless and kind, hers in every way that mattered. "Yes," she said, "let's go home." And together they walked out into the night they'd conquered, two people who'd been forced together by lies and had chosen to stay together through truth. The forged contract had brought them together, but love had made them unbreakable. And in the end, that was the only thing that mattered.